Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Otherworldly Fundraising. This is day 2, part 2. Basically, in other words, you've turned the tape over to the next side, and now we're getting into the secondary part of programming here at Otherworldly Fundraising, benefiting one simple wish. Don't forget to make a donation. Links are located in the description below, and they're also scrolling across the bottom of your screen. My name is Ryan. I am that man behind the curtain, but my time as a producer, I'm going to go to the backstage area and just chill. So in the meantime, please welcome our moderator for the next panel. Please welcome Dan Johnson. Dan, welcome in. And now these are the magic words you've all been waiting for. The stage is yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you are on social media right now, if you're on Facebook, you're on Instagram, share the link because we want to get as many people to join us for our upcoming interview. And also we want to get as many people as we can supporting the One Simple Wish charity. But definitely, you want to tune in for the interview we've got coming up right now. It is my honor to welcome to our convention, Mr. Rob Edwards.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Rob, it's a pleasure. First of all, with Rob, I'm very excited to talk to him. As a writer myself, I always love talking to other writers and looking over your credits. You have done some extensive work. I was going to say, why don't you tell the folks at home, the folks who are watching, a little bit about yourself and some of the things that they may have seen that you've written.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. I started off a million years ago. I wrote In Living Color, Fresh Prince. Let's see. Fresh Prince, Full House, Rock. Parenthood. Jeez, I did like a zillion. I think I have about 300 hours of TV under my belt. And then after that, I kind of got not tired, but I thought that there might be something other than writing for people sitting on a couch telling jokes. So I ventured into movies. I've always been an animation geek, so I found out that there was an opportunity to write the space version of Treasure Island. And so jumped into that, stayed up all night watching all the versions of Treasure Island, reading the book and all that stuff in time for a 10 o'clock a.m. meeting the next day. So they tell me at 6 p.m., they send me a script so I can't Xerox it. And then I meet with them at 10. So I didn't sleep that night, wound up getting the gig, which was great. And then just from there, I've had just a ton of fun in features. I've also worked on Hours. I worked on Studio 60 with Aaron Sorkin. And then I got to write the Princess and the Frog with the same directors that directed Treasure Planet. So that was a ball. That got nominated. Well, actually, that and Treasure Planet got nominated for Academy Awards, and then that one also got nominated for Golden Globe. So that was cool. And right now I'm working on a project called Defiant, the story of Captain Robert Smalls. So yeah, I've had a really good time.
Awesome. Well, I was going to ask, what got you into writing? What was it that made you want to become a writer in the first place?
Believe it or not, I was a shy kid. I was. Oh, there you go. Yeah. And I always find that there's two things in common with a lot of writer friends of mine. They were shy and their fathers were doctors for some reason. Fathers were professionals and in some way or another, they wanted to kind of squirrel away and get into something else. So I would say I was not the class clown. I was a kid in the back of the room making fun of the class clown.
Yeah.
And that just kind of evolved into a love of literature and theater. And then my dad had a Super 8 camera. That shows you how old I am. Had a Super 8 camera, and I would borrow that on weekends and, shoot stuff with my friends. Star Wars came out, and that was seismic. So I did my version of Star Wars, just blowing up models in my garage. And saving the world every weekend, and just that was my love of it, and that just kind of grew. I just thought, wow, it'd be really great to be good at this. A friend of mine recommended that I just read biographies, And so I did that. And from those, everybody's biographies. It was Neil Simon, Woody Allen, geez, you know, my heroes in writing, you know, Isaac Asimov and, you know, whatever. But a lot of the guys who were the giants of comedy, they'd all started as stand-up comics. They had all written for Variety. They had all worked into sitcoms, and then they started writing movies and then directing movies. And that was all of those guys. That was, you know, everybody from Woody Allen on down. And so I just went through those steps. I did stand-up for a while. I did sitcoms, obviously, for a long time. I did warm-up while I was doing sitcoms, and then moved through it and just, you know, took my licks. I mean, I wasn't great at everything, but you know, you go, you take your licks, you get better, bigger, better, faster, stronger, and it's just wound up being a ton of fun. And I'm glad I'm not a doctor. I think the world can be glad that Rob Edwards has not become a doctor. So yeah.
Well, we need more doctors with a sense of humor. So that would be.
Well, there you go. Well, laughter cures. Laughter cures a million things.
Well, I was going to mention a guest. Having been a shy kid, I take it that comedy was your way of breaking out of your shell.
Comedy was my way of breaking out of my shell, and also, making friends, and also staying out of fights. You know, that you know, couldn't throw a punch, and but I could really make fun of somebody in a way that would make them walk away. So that was that's always a good thing growing up. So I recommend it highly for everyone. You know, get funny and then and stay out of trouble.
Well, nobody wants to mess with the funny guy. It's like if you make people laugh, you know, you're going to be golden. So
yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, I'm wearing, you know, if Rob sees my shirt, I'm gonna, you know, he's gonna do 20 minutes on me, so I better avoid him. You know, so that's always a good thing.
Well, now you said you started out doing stand-up comedy. Were there any particular comedians that you were inspired by?
Yes,
growing up.
Many. I study everybody. I like everybody. I even like what is it? There's this Uncle Roger right now on YouTube. So I will study everybody all the way through. I've worked a lot with Chris Rock, and what I find with those guys, he and the writers that work with him, is that they're all comedy historians, and I think there's something really interesting, wonderful in that you really need to kind of study everything. When I was at Disney Pixar, those guys, it's been described not even by me as film school on steroids, where everybody studies everything all the time. And so for me, I liked, Richard Pryor, Lenny Bruce, you know, even some of the guys, Sam Kinison and those guys, everybody for what they were doing, because everybody had a different voice. And I didn't want to be a stand-up per se. I wanted to be a writer. So I really liked, oh, that guy is funny because he speaks in those rhythms, and his jokes are constructed this way. And this guy is funny because of the angle that he pursues comedy with. And so, so I very much, I will study everybody all the time, even people I don't like, because I want to see, why do people like them? Yeah. So yeah, it's good. You know, it's always good to geek out on comedy. I mean, there's worse things to do with your time than to watch fantastic comedy specials.
Well, it's kind of wonderful. It's fascinating also when you've got comedians today that have been inspired by comedians came before them, and then realized those comedians were inspired by the previous generation and the previous generation. And it's just kind of wonderful to think that humor has been formed over the course of almost 100 years, going all the way back to like vaudeville and burlesque. And it's just really kind of wonderful to think that something that might have been found funny in like 1923 is still going to be found humorous in 2023. You may have to tweak it a little bit for the culture, but
that was a fun debate, because I worked on the pilot for Martin, Martin Lawrence's sitcom, and we were talking about his Shanae character, where he gets in a dress, And we were saying, yeah, that's really innovative. You know, he's going to be playing the man and a woman and whatever. And I said, well, geez, has anybody seen Flip Wilson? Has anybody seen Milton Berle?
Yeah.
Has anybody seen, you know, like through the history of comedy, this has always been men in dresses 100%, you know, but there is a long, wonderful history about it. And you have to kind of look at it. You know, Flip Wilson was amazing as Geraldine. You know, Milton Berle was just doing it for camp. But as you go back through history, there's a lot of really great examples of that. And you always kind of build your cathedral on the shoulders of giants. Yeah. By the way, I see there's this question about a cinema therapy episode of on Treasure Planet. Somebody was asking if I'd seen it. I have not. I didn't know that it existed. I'm going to watch it right after this because I truly love watching reaction YouTube videos of the movies that I've made. They're really, it's one of the best feelings you ever get writing stuff that, you know, especially for public consumption. I like to sit in the front of the movie theater, especially with with both Treasure Planet and Princess and the Frog. I sit in the front row and then I look back. I look back and I watch the audience, and especially Princess and the Frog. There's this, you know, there's that moment when everybody bursts into tears. And it's interesting to watch how it evolves, where people will just get very quiet. And then you'll see heads go on shoulders. And then there's like arms and padding. And then the sniffles start. And then it's tissues. And it's interesting because if you look at a room of 500 people, it's like, oh, this is great. Everybody is having the same kind of cathartic experience in the same way. But no, I'd love to watch the cinema therapy episode of Treasure Planet. That'd be awesome.
Cinema therapy, I've seen some of the videos that the guy does. As I recall it correctly, it's a clinical psychologist who actually will break down the emotional reactions that people have to films. And yeah, you'll get a kick. I want to check it out myself. You know, the videos I've seen this guy has done has been fantastic. So.
Oh, excellent. Okay, good. Excellent.
Now,
well, follow up with me. I'll tell you. Find me on Insta. I'll tell you what I think about it. Or actually, I'll post something about it. Yeah.
Well, I'll trade you my information with Christian. She can get in touch. So, like I said, I'd love to talk more. Like I said, I'm definitely Defiant. I definitely want to talk to you more about that.
Absolutely.
Being a comics writer. But first, I got to ask. You mentioned in Living Color. What were some of the sketches that you did on Living Color? And were there any characters that you had a hand in creating for that show?
Oh wow. Well, in Living Color was funny because I think I was one of the first writers hired to do it. That Keenan Wayans just kind of had this idea, you know, hey, I want to do a Black Saturday Night Live. And, you know, I believe because the doors had been closed to him for so long on Saturday Night Live. Yeah. And he and Damon and they just kind of wanted to, they had all these ideas they wanted to do. And so we sat down, like, you know, what, you know, can you do this? At the time, I think I was working on like Different World or something very sitcom conventionally. And my agents were, you know, when I said I was interested in doing it, my agent said, absolutely not. Do not, you know, don't go to Variety after you've done sitcom. That's it. People do it the other way. I said, no, this sounds exciting. It sounds like something, you know, the reason why I got into the entertainment industry is to do stuff like this. It kind of breaks doors down. And so we got right to work. There were some fantastic writers on the thing. And I'll tell two stories and I'll tell one story. I'll answer your question. The one thing that I found was interesting about it, which will lead to our conversation about Defiant, is that the executives, largely white, on the show didn't get the show that we were doing. It was supposed to be an hour series, and then they cut it to a half-hour series, and then they cut it to an hour special, and then they cut it to a half-hour special. They kept every day that they would come in and watch the run-throughs, they'd say, like, nope, we're saving our money. We're going to cut this back, cut this back, cut this back.
Oh, man.
And I kept asking them, well, why were they doing this? Because I was like, I was at the time the guy with with sitcom street cred, and they said, well, it's just not funny. I said, well, you and I are watching this different shows because this show is hilarious.
Yeah.
And they said, no, it's not. No, come on, Rob, stop it. And they come to the taping, And at the taping, I don't know if you've ever seen like a black audience at a sitcom, but it was like a church experience where people were stomping their feet and high-fiving and whooping, not laughing, but just wah and whatever, yelling at the thing. People were literally running up and down the aisles, high-fiving people when the jokes would come around. And the executives turned to me and they said, like, "Oh, did you pay those guys to do that?" I was like, "You can't pay people to do this. This show is cathartic. We've been waiting a long time for a show like this. So this is it." And the sketch that did it was Wrath of Farrakhan.
Yes. Oh, I love that one. That is so cool.
Yeah, because nobody was touching Louis Farrakhan. It was just like, and that was it. Keaton said all of the third rails. We're just licking all the third rails. So we're doing, Arsenio, we're doing Mike Tyson, we're doing everybody. And so that was it. Like the Mike Tyson and Robin Givens on with Love Connection. I had a part in that. I wrote a sketch that we didn't do because I think we thought it was too inside for the audience, which was the 1934 Image Awards.
Yeah.
and I'd written that because it was at the time it was like Step and Fetch It and Mantan Moreland and Hattie McDaniel. And I just wanted to show like just how far we'd come from those very stereotypical performances, and that if there was an Image Awards at that time, they would have had to have given them to those particular performers. And that wound up becoming This Moment in Black History, and that was sustained. That continued on, and I forget what the other. I had one other big sketch that kind of wound up enduring through that. I only stayed on for the pilot, but I have credit on 9 episodes because once they had cut down the amount of stuff that we were going to do on the show, Keenan said, "We're going to shoot an hour and a half of material, whether or not they say half hour or not. We're just going to shoot. We have a bunch of great stuff. There's no need to throw it away. Let's just go." So we shot 90 minutes of material, and that got cannibalized over 9 shows. So I get credit for 9 shows. I was just there for the 3 weeks of the pilot.
Well, I was going to say, the executives obviously had no clue what they were talking about because you cannot fake laughter. I mean, I've seen people who fake laughter, and you can tell when somebody's faking it, and when you really, it's a real belly laugh when people are really reacting. Exactly.
Yeah, that horror and comedy are kind of share a space.
Exactly.
And really, as a movie writer, you want to try to find those moments that are just cathartic and fulfilling and whatever. I'm always talking about I think in decades, I'd never seen a bigger movie moment than when Steve Rogers, when Captain America catches Mjolnir, the hammer, Thor's hammer.
Endgame,
in Endgame. And friends of mine had gone out of their way. I tried to see it the first weekend. And friends of mine had gone out of their way to say, like, I'm not going to say a word about it. Just talk about it, just see it. And then we're going to have coffee on Monday. And when that moment happens, there's this wave of energy through the audience. Now it's just pictures. It's just, there's a light bulb and some, some celluloid and some things and the magnetic things and whatever are creating sound around the room. And this magical moment happens. And everybody is just, oh my God, it's happening. Wow. And you can't hear anything for like 3 minutes after that moment. And everybody is just kind of looking like, oh, hey, did you experience that too? That's what makes movies great. And so if you're writing comedy, that feeling, that anticipation of this is really funny. I'm now just sitting in my office laughing, but I have a feeling that maybe a couple hundred people in the theater might enjoy this joke the same way as I do, or this is really scary, or I think this moment, like, when Ray dies in Princess and the Frog, when I wrote it, I was just crying my eyes out. I'm in my office, and there were 2 scenes. One is when she says, Evangeline is just a star, Ray, you know, whatever, just ball hot air. And she walks away, and he says, oh, she's just speaking out of a broken heart. You know, he immediately forgives her, and he's just wonderful. And then and then the scene where he dies. And I would leave my office open at Disney, my door to my office open. And I'm sitting in my office, and I'm just bawling my eyes out. And people would walk by, and they go, Rob, are you okay? I'm like, just wait. I'm going to publish these pages in a couple of minutes, and you'll see what I'm going through. And sure enough, one by one, the story crew would walk by my office, eyes in tears, going, Rob, this is beautiful. I can't wait to, whatever. Let's hope that none of us screw this up, because there's a chain. And then you wait like 2 years, for people to actually experience it. But yeah, there's nothing like writing comedy, horror, really great emotional moments. It's why we do what we do.
Well, I was going to say, we have a question, and that is, what advice do you have for aspiring writers?
Yes. Writing is one of those things you can't. The meanest thing I say to people will say like, yeah, I'll answer it this way. One, there should not be any such thing as an aspiring writer. You're a writer. It's click. You're either a writer who is writing, you're struggling, or you're not writing and you're thinking about writing. In which case, I always say, and that's the main thing I always say, is that, okay, good. If you're an aspiring writer, I'm an aspiring NFL quarterback. Yep. I sit in my room and I watch a lot of stuff, and I know a lot about where the ball should go and all that kind of stuff. I've never put on cleats and I've never gotten on a field. And it's only when you do that. You can't read about baseball. You can't read about, race car driving. You have to get in a car or on a field or anything like that. You really have to sit down and write wrong. You're going to write wrong. There's this great book, Bird by Bird. And the first chapter is S-word first drafts, that we all write those really, really, really horrible first drafts. I have them all over this office, and the key is you don't let anybody see that. Right. A lot of people will write it and they'll say, "Oh, I'm not a good writer. I'm just going to stop," and that to me is silly. You write and then you write and then you write again. You show people that will beat you up.
Yes.
Who you respect. Whose opinion you respect. Show your mom, whatever. I used to show my brother, who had like zero attention span, and he would just put my stuff. He'd read two lines and he'd throw it away, and he'd just toss it on his bed and promise me that he would read it later, and he never would. And so that was my challenge. I want my brother to read one page of my short story, and then I just started studying. Like, well, okay. The first words in Hamlet are "Halt, who goes there?" What a great first line! You come most quickly upon your hour, Horatio. It's like, well, is the ghost here yet? What ghost? Are you kidding me? What? You're in that thing. You're going. And so once I read that, I said, okay, good enough for Shakespeare, good enough for me. And so exactly. I planted stuff very early on in my short stories that would get my brother to read until the third page, and by then I would have other things in there. And now I write like that all the time. You can see that at the beginning of Princess and the Frog, there's all kinds of Easter eggs, just laying there, just little things, depth charges waiting to go off, and that's just from learning how to write. So no such thing as an aspiring writer. Just sit down and write, especially in this world where you can make a YouTube video today about anything. You can self-publish pretty much everywhere if literary, if you're literary. That there's nothing stopping you from anything. Right. The cruel reality of writing is that you do most of it for free. I always say I get paid to take notes, but that writers wake up at 4 a.m. thinking, oh crap, there's so many pages I haven't written yet. That you're just driven to you watch an old lady, walking with a young boy down the street, and there's a little, whatever, a Boy Scout or something, and you say like, oh, that looks like a cool story. Oh, I wonder if that lady, whoa, I wonder if she turned into a vampire and ate the, oh, great. And then, and you see those things all over the place, and my greatest fear is that I'll die before I get all my ideas out. Exactly. Not that I'm waiting for the first thing that I write to be perfect. It's like, no, there's things that I was lauded for early in my career that I look back on and just like, oh my God. So yeah.
Well, bear in mind, as a writer, you're always going to be your worst critic. I mean, that's the thing.
Absolutely.
But also,
my voice is in my head. My voice is in my head all the time, and I think that's why. I think that's common with all writers, that you sit there and you just like, shut up. I just want to get this first draft, first draft done. And you're like, Angel, talk to me. And then you go, and then you invite that devil back onto your shoulder, and you say, and you grab your red pen and and you just go and strike all that stuff out. Yeah.
I have to ask, you're talking about voices in your head. As a writer, have you ever found yourself having a conversation with your characters where you're talking to your characters are talking to you, or they're talking to each other, and you realize it's all you doing it? It's almost like a ventriloquist act.
100%. 100%. I mean, that was an interesting thing about working with Aaron Sorkin, because his characters are all basically him. That he's very glib and very smart and very he does tend to speak with a rhythm that is almost musical. And when he gets going, yes, he is both sides of the argument always. He's never like there's one character and a straw man. No, both characters are very smart and very, strategic and knowledgeable about what they're doing. I tend to look at different aspects of myself as the different characters. I'm a hardworking guy, so I really do identify with Tiana. I always say I will not be out hustled. And so Tiana and I have a relationship. And then I'm like this, doctor's son who drove sports cars all the time and whatever, and, went to private school in Syracuse and stuff. And so I really identified with that notion of the prince and that part of it. And so I would, more often than not, I would either write my courtship with my wife, or I would write arguments with myself, back and forth between the two of them. What's the most clever thing Tiana can say? Okay, great. What's the most, Naveen thing that Naveen can say? Because he's not trying to out clever. He's just charming. So how can I make those conversations more interesting? And the level to which they're not interesting is the level to which I'm not interesting, right? So that's part of my job as a writer also, is to do interesting things, get experience in all kinds of different aspects of life, really drive myself to learn as much as I can about everything. When I started that project, immediately I said, weirdly, guys, I'd like to become an expert on green tree frogs, because both Tiana and Naveen spend most of the movie as green tree frogs. And they said, because it's Disney Pixar, they were like, yeah, we're way ahead of you. We've got books, we've got an expert that you can talk to right away. If you look at Finding Nemo, there's all kinds of stuff about, that lets you know just how much they studied about marine life and the specific marine life of Australia and all of that, because you want the world to be real. And so, yeah, all of that stuff, it becomes part of you. And I always find that there should be a little bit of my DNA in every single one of my characters. And the thing I'll say too to students is love your characters. I see a lot of people who write characters that are, they're evil, or they're, whatever, they're dumb or something like that. And I'm like, no, that it never works that way. You have to have an affection for the characters that you're writing. And it helps if you yourself identify personally with those characters.
I've always heard your characters are your babies or your children.
Yes.
And even when a child goes wrong, if a child has done something so terrible that society labels him a monster, as the parent, you're still going to say, "That's my child. I love him," or "I love her."
Yes. Yes.
And I think that's the way it is with creating villains and creating bad guys. It's the worst villains are always the one where they're twirling the mustache and there's no redeeming value, or you can't see the human side of them. But if you can find a villain and say, you know what, he's a monster, he's got to be stopped, but on a level, I kind of get what he's talking about.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. Like Facilier as a bad guy, it's very easy to look at him and go, "Oh, he's literally twirl his mustache," and then we committed very early on, we are not going to have him twirl a mustache at all. And it was the late '90s when we were doing it, and we thought, things were going on with the market. There were all these guys who were over leveraged. There was the the bailout. And I said, maybe he's just over leveraged, that maybe he's just a guy who wants money. He wants money because he wants Big Daddy's money. He has a plan to get it, and then it fails, and so his recourse is to double down with the friends on the other side, to go to them and ask them essentially for a loan. For him to finish it, and as he does, he can't lose, and so he can be as nice a guy in the world as you want, but he cannot lose this thing because he's going to get pulled into the underworld. Yeah. And once you look at him that way, you say, okay, good, I get this guy, because there's so many people who are exactly like him, just in a different way. Like there was this time with Bond villains where they worked really hard to humanize them. And that I liked a lot, that idea of, Thanos is trying to do the world a favor, and that you have to look at it from that perspective. Give your bad guys are people too, in their world, they're good guys. And the good guy's the bad guy. So yeah,
I always point out to Magneto from the X-Men movies, Ian McKellen, when you realize he's a Holocaust survivor and you realize what's happened before.
He's a tragic figure. Yeah.
Again, what he wants to do is evil, but on a human level, you understand exactly why he's doing this. He's seen what happens when madmen start letting their prejudices run wild and start looking for scapegoats. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's the thing. And then when you find that, because the other part is easy. Oh, he's evil. He wants to stop the good guy from doing the thing, or he wants the same thing as a good guy. Those the antagonist rules. But when you find something, when you find an antagonistic motivation that could easily flip the movie, if you wanted to tell it from the other point of view, then it's just delicious. Then you're writing. You're saying something about the world. Yeah. I was just watching this movie, Sisu. I don't know if nobody else has seen this thing, but it's the greatest movie for a long, long time, beside RRR. Anyway, yeah. but Sisu is this movie about this German guy who finds a bunch of gold, and the Nazis are trying to stop him. And it's basically John Wick from then on in. Nice. But the motivation for the bad guy is he's a Nazi, and they say, well, we should just walk away. Let's just give up on this thing. And he says, after the war is over, all of the soldiers will just be discarded on the streets like we were nothing. The only thing that will prevent that from happening is gold. Some of us will have profiteered, and some of us will just be on the streets like average, people without homes, without any purpose in life. And so I need that gold. And at that point, it's the what Michael Arndt calls the antagonist's aria, but it's a beautiful way to look at the movie, because immediately it reverses, and you think about Vietnam and then what happened to the soldiers after that, and just how we treat soldiers in general, and the movie takes on this new depth in it. So yeah, that is wonderful. Oh, and I do want to say, for those aspiring writers, I would take advantage of Michael Arndt, who wrote Toy Story 3 and also Little Miss Sunshine, has a bunch of videos on his website where he talks about what he learned at Disney Pixar. And I point everybody to those things because they're just brilliant. He had some animators animated for you, so it's not all dry and dusty, but it is. It really opens up. He thinks like me. He's super analytical. So it really explains how to put together a movie in a way that nobody has done before.
So I'll check those out. I'll check out that movie also. It's, what's the name of that again?
Sisu, Sisu. It's so interesting. If you like John Wick, if you like some of those just straight up cat and mouse action movies. It's really good, and I believe it was done by the guys who did John Wick for about $6 million. And for once again, aspiring writers, directors, actors, you make a movie for $6 million that works in an action category. Whoever did that movie, their next movie is going to go through the roof.
Did this have a female lead in it? It was like really badass.
Oh, there was one. What was it called? You're Next. That was a really good.
Yes,
female
that's
lead.
what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, and that one was super clever. They did it in one room. It couldn't have cost more than $15 to make. It was like Saw. It all takes place in one room, and it's just very clever telling of a movie, and off you go. I'll also say, as we're talking about great movies, great first movies that people, aspirational people should check out. Chris Nolan made a movie called Becoming. It's black and white. It's about an hour long. It's supposed to be a movie, but it only clocked out at about an hour. But it's so clever, so well written. It's just two guys, more or less sitting in cafes, whatever. One guy's a bank robber. One guy wants to be a bank robber, witnesses a robbery, and then wants to be like him and stuff. But it's just so clever along the way that you see everything that Chris Nolan does that's great. His handling of characters, his handling of suspense, his sense of irony, his twisty storytelling. All of that stuff was in this movie that I think he made just on pocket change over a year. People's hair changed during from scene to scene because he was just grabbing the actors when he could. But a brilliant way to make a debut. I see a lot of writers. I teach at USC, and I have a lot of students who will write these epic $200-300 million movies as their first movie, and I'll tell them nobody's going to make that movie. It can be really, really, really creative, but nobody's going to spin the wheel on a 21-year-old first time writer for $300 million. If it doesn't work, that executive never works again. If it does work, it's a freak, it's a fluke, whatever. And who knows what the next thing you do will be. So, and worst case scenario, that movie will be taken away from you and given to a bigger writer very quickly. So beware those kind of traps, Hollywood traps.
I've always heard the best advice you can give a writer that's doing a script is write it like you're spending your own money.
Yes.
Write it as inexpensive as you can, because when you start thinking that way, you start thinking in terms of, we could have the big sky beam coming down. It's going to blow up the whole city. Or we could have a scene where it's really intense scene between a husband and wife where the husband is going to sacrifice himself.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And like I said, it's not trying to be flippant, but sometimes the right word, the right emotion, the right scene is written can be worth more than any special effects in the world.
Right. Well, it's interesting because in Defiant, my graphic novel, there is a scene. There's in Robert Smalls's life when he was about 10 years old, because he was raised by his white slave owner, essentially as a rich white boy. So and I believe that's my theory is that's why he felt him, always felt the constrictions of being a slave and really wanted to kind of gain his freedom. And he gained his freedom by essentially commandeering a Confederate ship and surrendering it to the Union Army, becoming a war hero and going on to all kinds of things. But there is a something that happened to him when he was young, when he was a kid, and that was that his mom had to take him and basically teach him how to be a slave. And so she, because he was acting out, he was getting arrested at night for hanging out with white kids and all kinds of stuff. And so she takes him to a slave auction, and then she has him work on a plantation. And so when we were doing the slave auction thing, I said, the last thing I want to do in this project is, I'm a Disney guy. I'm the guy who wrote Princess and the Frog, and I'm writing a slave thing. I don't want to see whips. I don't want to see blood. I want to see anything like that. I want this to be a movie the family can watch and enjoy and get inspired by this guy. But part of his origin story is this thing. Yeah. So I said, well, what if we just look at, and this is the comic book. What if we just show the kid seeing the things that are happening? Yeah. Maybe see the shadows on the wall behind him of what's happening, but see the horror on the kid's face, because I think that's more important in the moment than what is happening, than the slave auction or the kid being separated from his mom or any of that stuff. The more important thing is, how is Robert reacting to that moment? How does a 10-year-old react to seeing a mother pulled from his child's thing, or seeing a grown man get whipped, or seeing somebody get auctioned off, and taken away, or a family split up? Any of these things. The biggest thing is the eyes, and I think that's when storytelling solves a problem, when you can artfully solve a problem in your story, I think that's also like a gem. I mean, that's what, once again, the writer's toolbox, the writer's craft. I think that's what it's all about.
Well, I was going to ask. Well, actually, we have a question first, but I'll come back to what I was going to ask. Yes. As a writer, how do you avoid the rabbit hole of what I just came up with must have been done by someone else by now? Should I produce or give up on it?
Yes. Proceed. That there are, I don't know if you remember, there was this time when there were like 3 movies about asteroids about to hit the world. And
I remember that year.
Yeah, exactly. It was crazy, but really there was only one that stood out. There was only one good one. And there's a million switcheroo movies, and then there's Parent Trap and Big. That of them, and I'd say that there were, I don't know how many. I'd say close to at least half a dozen, 8 of these switcheroo movies, where a kid becomes a parent, whatever. And then there's, just there are 2 that stand out that you really think about. And Big was the last of them. Penny Marshall just really figured it out. It's well written, it's artful. Tom Hanks was brilliant in it, and it said all the things that you usually say with a switcheroo movie. So I think that there's always that thing of like, there are only so many ideas out in the universe, right. And that you're gonna do them. The key as a writer, if you play basketball, there's probably somebody who's shot from the exact same place that you were shooting in the exact same way and put the ball in the hole. Somehow the way that you do it and the timing that you do it and the circumstances make it better, or worse. So you can't really go on that. The key is to what a lot of people do, and this is a secret sauce, which I'm glad this person asked me. The secret sauce of it is to know the other iterations of the thing that has been done before. That there's a million romantic comedies in the world. There's one Princess and the Frog, and frankly, Princess and the Frog, if you watch It Happened One Night and Princess and the Frog side by side, you're going to find out a lot about how Rob Edwards wrote The Princess and the Frog. If you watch Royal Holiday and watch Princess and the Frog, you're going to see a lot. That there's I learned a lot from those movies, and I stood on the shoulders of giants and made my movie better. I didn't ignore them because they were not ignorable. It was, it happened one night, won 9 Academy Awards. It's the greatest romantic comedy ever made. So why wouldn't I really, really, really study that movie? It's a road picture. Pixar was known for their road pictures, and I wanted to kind of make a new type of romantic comedy. So if you replace Clark Gable and if you replace the two roles, that's basically where I am, where Tiana is Clark Gable. So so off you go. The other, not only knowing how those things work, but also that you are part of the continuum. You're part of movie history. You'll be whatever 7 of 9 to tell a Star Trek reference, but you'll be in there in that line. So make sure that you have built from 6543, and that your innovation is better than anybody else will do, and then the next person is challenged to beat you in what you do. So so don't back away from it. Acknowledge it and beat it. Be better than the previous model. I'm working on something now, and somebody was saying like, "Oh yeah, that's basically Lone Wolf and Cub," and I said, "Oh, it's not just a movie; it's a genre." That Mandalorian is Lone Wolf and Cub.
Yeah.
And if you really understand Mandalorian, then you're in great shape. If you don't, some of the problems probably with other things in the canon suffer from not really acknowledging that these movies, Kurosawa made some really fantastic movies that we should all be studying, and that is now more easy than any other time in the world to go back and study film history and and build.
Well, I was going to say that's what Favreau was talking about when he did Mandalorian. He said he based it on Lone Wolf and Cub, and in a way, it was a nod to George Lucas looking at Kurosawa's films and drawing inspiration from those. So
yes, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. I think that it's we would like to think that we are unique snowflakes, and that everything we do is gonna it's gotta, if it comes from the heart and it's super organic and it's really original, then that'll be good. And I don't think that that's the way movies work. I think maybe that's the way art works. But if you look at if you look at people who paint, the way they learn how to paint is they go into galleries and they paint the grandmasters. You go into big museums and there are kids with canvases repainting the grandmasters stroke for stroke to learn how that is. If you're going to learn music, then you start with chopsticks and then you move up and then you play the greatest greatest piano pieces that you can, until you are playing the more complex pieces. And by playing those, you learn how those things are constructed, and then you start composing. John Williams didn't just wake up and go, "Oh, I'm going to compose." He was a fantastic musician for a long, long time. Randy Newman, fantastic musician for a long, long time. And then they go off and they compose. So the same should apply to writing. And I think we get gummed up because we don't learn how to write by studying writing. We learn how to write by writing, so it becomes a tougher thing to learn. We're composing and learning the craft at the same time. But I think there's a lot to be said for reading screenplays, watching movies, really getting into the DNA of what makes a movie work. Watch it. I always say, watch it 2-3 times, 5 times, 10 times, until the magic of it wears off. And then you say, okay, now let's dissect this thing. Act 1, scene 1. What did they do there that made me so enthralled? Wait, when I cried in Act 3, what was that about? Okay, that's what made me cry. What did they do to make me, what were the essential elements that got me to tears in Act 3? They started in Act 1. And just, go, go, go. You see this wall here, this wall here. It's post-its on a door for those who are listening, and it's the structure of, this is actually defined. This is the life of Robert Smalls, but most of the time, he's born at the top of the door and he dies on the bottom, and the middle of it is the doorknob is basically he starts running for Congress and stuff. But the most movies for me, I start on that door. And what I want to know is what makes other movies in the genre that I'm working on, what makes them work.
Yeah.
And so I will study. I mean, I watched every single princess movie that there was. I watched all the episodes of all the TV shows about princesses. Yeah. And then I got going on, Judd Apatow romantic comedies, classic romantic comedies, everything, because I really wanted all that stuff to be, kind of seeping out of me as I was writing. And then and only then that I sit down and put pen to paper. I regret that many people don't do that. That when they find out that, oh, there was another movie about a mermaid who, whatever, I guess I'll stop writing. It's like, no, there's Splash, there's Little Mermaid, there's dozens of movies about mermaids. Exactly. Some are bad and some are good. What made the bad ones bad? What made the good ones good?
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is, even like you said, there's only just so many stories that can be told. The thing is, finding your own unique spin on it. It's putting what you bring to the table. And plus, too,
I'm a different person than IAL Diamond. So, right. If I were to do something like It Hot, I'd probably come up with a different spin on it. If I were to do The Apartment, I'm sure I could do a great version of The Apartment. Urban Black, different thing. You wouldn't know it. When we were doing Fresh Prince, we sat down and watched Brady Bunch episodes, because we knew that no matter what we did on Fresh Prince, no one would ever say, "Oh, that's just the Brady Bunch." Right. Because we were making it unique to the show. We were just looking for seeds, little inspirational seeds to take us the rest of the way. But that's, you have to count on the fact that you are whatever aspects of you that make you are worth sharing with an audience.
Well, I think too, regardless of what you put on the page, if it's real, if it's engaging, I always think a really good story is going to cross all barriers. It isn't going to be based on what color you are, where you come from, your nationality. Yep. A really good story is going to resonate with you because on a human level, we all have the same emotions. We all have the same shared, we don't have shared experiences, but we can relate and have empathy towards one another.
Absolutely.
And it's like we laugh at the same things, we're crying at the same things.
I think so. I think there is a, Lenny Bruce used to say, we're all the same schmuck.
Yeah.
and that the things that you think are, wow, that could have only happened to me. There's probably, a good couple, hopefully million people out there who the same thing has happened to, especially when you're talking about relationships or, I like to write about fathers and sons. I think that there is a lot of commonality, no matter who you are, and by sharing it, it brings out the humanity in everybody. I mean, one of my favorite movies was Crazy Rich Asians, and I have no members of my family who share that. But man, my family's West Indian, and there were scenes, shot for shot that happened in our family. So, it does. It brings us together. It's like, okay, noodles and what is it? As they're folding the noodles, I'm like, meat patties in my community, and there is a religiosity to the best meat patties and why they need to be made in a certain way. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, I was going to say, I was just looking at the time. We've got just a few minutes for our next panel starts. I did want to ask Defiant, how can people find this book? And who's the publisher?
Yes, Defiant is, I'm doing it with Legion M. They're the company. So if you go to their website, you can find it. You can also find it at defiant.com and also on Instagram at Defiant Project. And it's always there. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I am Rob Edwards. Actually, on all platforms, I am Rob Edwards, and I usually talk it up. We did a Kickstarter campaign where we launched it, and we said we had asked for $10,000, and we wound up with about $160,000. So it was very nice, because you come out and you say, "Gee, I hope people will like this idea and would want to buy a book like this." And boy, howdy, people came to us. I think we're going to when we start pre-selling again on Legion, either Legion M or the Defiant website, we'd like to open it up again to pre-sales to let people have an opportunity to go. The thing that is happening that I really like is that timing is always so perfect, but that people want to buy the books for schools. Yes. And so that is a good thing, because that's part of the idea of doing it as a graphic novel and not as a novel, not as a historical text or anything like that, was to kind of get kids where they're at, tell kids an inspirational story that they want to hear in a way that they want to hear it, as opposed to like being dusty or being like a, whatever, some channel, whatever, where it's just like, oh, hey, I remember the thing, yes. And by me telling it, I'm trying to tell the story in a different way. I'm trying for it to be as entertaining as possible. He was charismatic, so I assume he was funny. Many of the stories that are told in it are within that period of history were super ironic and have not been told. I'm a geek, so I've researched just absolutely everything, every aspect of not only this guy's life, but what was going on contextually around it. We packed a room at Comic-Con, and they were also very enthusiastic about it. I'll talk it up a little bit. Nicholas Draper Ivey, who does Static Shock and a bunch of really amazing stuff. He's a fantastic artist. He's been doing the covers. And Ray Anthony Height, who does Black Panther, is doing the interiors. He's amazing. He's got this great anime style that works really well with us. Christopher Robinson, who edits the Black Panther comic books, is editing the graphic novel. It has expanded into 3 volumes because this guy's life is so big. But it's truly an incredible story, and I think we are telling it in a way that that honors it as a story. Once again, for the aspiring writers, I don't think I could have written this movie or this book, this story 20 years ago. I really think I needed to kind of go through the boot camp of Disney Pixar and the pressures of writing the first Black Princess and stuff like that before I hit this thing, because I know how seriously people take these kinds of stories, and I know how important it is to do all of the research and really get it right, and then, like I say, make it as entertaining as humanly possible.
Yeah, I was just checking here. Our next guest is Doug Jones, who's supposed to be coming up, but he has not checked in yet.
Okay.
So I'll tell you what, I'm going to make a plug real quick for our charity, which is One Simple Wish. For you folks that are tuning in at this time, One Simple Wish is a charity that we're very much behind. There are a lot of kids that are in foster care, and a lot of these kids have gone through childhood trauma. And we're raising money to help make some of the most simple wishes come true. We're not talking about big extravagant things like vacations or luxury toys or anything like that. We're talking about kids that are looking for like clothes for school, hygiene products, just simple things that a lot of kids take for granted. We're currently at $800, so if you guys could donate, that'd be fantastic. And I believe Doug has checked in, correct?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Thank you for that pitch, and thank you so much, Rob, for being here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It was great. What a pleasure.
Well, like I said, we got Doug Jones coming up. If you want to stick around, I know he's going to be a great guest.
Yeah, right. Well, Shape of Water is brilliant, and he's amazing. He's amazing. So my props go to that guy.
Awesome.
Just great. Excellent.
Well,
Cool.
Rob, thank you again. It's been an honor talking with you. And I'll tell you what, without further ado, let's bring on Mr. Doug Jones and John Gleckler, who's going to be monitoring this one.
Hello, let me get everyone on screen and then I will get out of your way.
Hello there. How are you today?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good. I'm going to give you my slightly prepared introduction.
Okay.
The first and only time I met our guest this hour was in Springfield, Missouri earlier this year. My wife and I stood in the autograph queue for an hour. And when we reached the table, this guest looked at us like we were the most important people in the room and that he'd been waiting all day just to say hello. That is how awesome our guest, Doug Jones, is. Welcome to you. Yay! Here's your round of applause. There.
I don't think I can live up to that introduction. Thank you so much for that, John.
Not a problem. I'll give you an immediate out version. When we go to, my family goes to Metropolis every year for the Superman celebration.
Yeah.
There's a lot of porch parties and fun stuff with just
Sure.
big crowds and noise and 12 conversations. And I love that. But the best thing to do is to find one person and sit in the corner. And whether you remember the conversation the next day or not, you just live in that moment and you enjoy it and you talk. And that's all I'm hoping for this hour.
Okay. Well, let's do that then.
All right. I did, however, write down a few questions just to be sure.
Terrific.
And some of them are just pointlessly silly and some are relevant to your career. So I'm going to give you one choice right off. Would you like a silly question or a real one?
Okay. You're going to give me, I get the what? I'm sorry.
Oh,
what's
you
the
can
choice
choose.
was, I'm sorry.
You can choose a silly question or a more realistic one.
Oh, I say we start with silly. Well, why not? Then? Why
Okay.
not?
Well, then this immediately causes debate because is this even a silly question?
Okay.
Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Absolutely yes. I love
There it
Mrs.
is.
Hawaiian pizza. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. I would never tell
My-
that to my Italian friends, but for me personally, love it.
Yeah, I love a ham pizza, so I think if I have to have pineapple on there, it's got to have ham or at least black olives to go with. Somehow like a little bitterness to go with it. I think it's the right way to do it. A more realistic question would be to start earlier in your career, given the amazing talent you express on camera. Where did we start? If you were to say, you know, like those fun stories, like, well, I was in the school play and I got to play a tree. For you, that might be an amazing backstory. Do you have that kind of origin, or did it start later in life when you're like, this is what I'm doing. I don't like this. I want to do this.
No, I have pretty much been monofocused all my life. When I was a kid watching TV, when I was a geeky, skinny-necked, awkward kid watching TV, I found characters like Barney Fife on the Mayberry Show, and Dick Van Dyke, and Jerry Lewis, and Danny Kaye, and anybody who was kind of like not handsome leading man, but kind of a goofy and attractive in that way. I was like, you know, that's what I want to be and do. That's what I'm built for, I think. So that's what kind of stuck with me. And even if once I went to Ball State University, I majored in radio and TV broadcasting. I had a minor in theater to keep my toe, like I had a toe in reality. Like for growing up in Indiana in the Midwest, it's kind of sensible to have some kind of a relatable skill other than acting. And then also to keep my toe dipped into the creative pond too, with a theater degree. So I didn't have any idea what the possibilities were for me with employment as an actor. But leaving college, my first job out of college was at Kings Island, a Midwestern theme park. And I was a mime on the streets there because I learned the mime art while I was in college. I was in a mime troupe called Mime Over Matter. That's a pun. And so, you know, that skill set was sort of a part of me by now. And so I got to use that at a theme park, scaring children all summer, and basically roaming around the park, entertaining people with ropes and walls that weren't there. And then after that, I was thinking, I better settle down and be like a responsible adult now and carry a briefcase and wear a tie like my dad did. So I got a job as after lots of interviewing and sending out resumes, I got a job as an advertising salesman for a newspaper in a small town in northern Indiana. I was there for 2 years, and I actually liked the small town experience, and I liked the community aspect of it. But while I was having my day job as an advertising salesman, I also had my night gig as a mime still, who would hire out for banquets and after dinner entertainment, and I entertained at schools and scout groups and parades and the Lions Club, the Kiwanis Club, the Optimist Club, anybody that would have entertainment, I was available. And I ended up getting a little name for myself in northern Indiana. I traveled around on nights and weekends doing that. Again, that kept the creative side of me alive. And then ended up moving out to Los Angeles, California in March of 1985 to take a bank job that my uncle set up for me. And he introduced the opportunity, and I interviewed for it. And the problem is that I interview well, but I don't have much follow-up when it comes to a bank job. So square peg, round hole, we found out. So within about, it was a 9-month training program that would make me a manager, an operations officer, supervising tellers and keeping track of all that's in the vault. You should not trust me with that. And they found that out by month 8. They were like, yeah, this isn't going to work, Doug. So they fired me, and I might have teared up and been depressed for maybe an hour. And then I was like, I'm free. And now we were living in California. And so that's when I started doing my acting classes and to see if I could get into TV commercials. And I did take a TV commercial acting class that ended up with an instructor who was an agent. After my second class, he said, do you have an agent yet? And I said, well, I'm not sure what an agent is. And so he gave me his card, called me at the office, he said, and that's what started my TV commercial career that parlayed into over 100 commercials over my lifetime so far. And then from that, he sent me out on all the things that were goofy physicality, because the mime background and the contortion background, I can put my legs behind my head. So we had that on my resume as contortionist. Well, you'd be surprised how many casting calls call for that kind of thing. So I ended up doing several commercials that involved. My very first commercial was for Southwest Airlines as a dancing mummy. That was kind of boding of things to come. A lot of any roles in commercials that involved like some kind of funny movement also came with a look that they would have to glue on to me, right? So I got to know the creature effects makeup people from that. And that's when the referrals would start then, like, oh, hey, we're also working on a movie and maybe you'd be good for that. As I was getting calls at home, kind of circumventing the usual system of agent and casting director from a creature shop directly to me saying, they trust us. They want our referrals. When a movie hires a creature effects house to create a monster, and that creature effects house says, we got the right guy to play this, the production company is usually fine. Then if that's fine, we trust you. So that's how I got a lot of my early gigs.
That's brilliant. And it paints a very interesting picture, because there had to have been some gaps, but that little summary right there was like, I showed up, I did the work, bam, here we are. So many other people are like, well, I shared an apartment with 16 people and we ate a lot of rice,
Yeah.
But you started with an actual real job, which may
I did. Well, because I'm more that I'm because of my parents were very responsible people and very successful people, and I kind of like had that drilled into me that you must plan for the future. You can't just get a granola bar, pack a van up, and go take your chances. There are people who do that and do it well and have success from it. I'm just not one of those people. I have to be able to see tomorrow, because I'm a little bit anxious if I can't.
Yeah. The word anxious, on some of my notes, I thought about it. I've seen other interviews with people that would say, well, I was in this makeup for wherever hours, I was in this really constricting kind of thing. And then there are moments of panic in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
Is that something that you ever dealt with, or
Oh.
were you comfortable from the beginning?
No, never. No, I have not been comfortable consistently from the beginning on. There's good months, bad months in any actor's career. Anyone in the creative arts, you're going to have you're working gigs. A good gig followed by zero, followed by another good gig, followed by zero, and those moments can be anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. You never know how long you're going to be without a gig. So, again, the sensible saver in me, like I didn't make some money off of one commercial and then blow it all, and then have to suffer until the next gig. I'm a saver and like a squirrel. I want to put away and it's just, I'm totally based out of fear that I'm going to go under. So, but I kind of made it work over the years. And so with the referral process, I really do owe the creature effects makeup people my career, because they're the ones who kept me in mind and kept calling me again and again and referring me for the next job and the next job that that introduced me to wonderful directors like Guillermo del Toro. They call you up saying, we have a perfect thing for you in a movie, and it happens to be directed by this up and coming director named Guillermo del Toro in 1997, and then that spawns a 25-year relationship with the man, and 6 movies and a TV series. So I really do owe all of that beginnings to the creature effects people.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. And that is almost hilarious that right there on the screen it says, how did you come to meet and work with Guillermo del Toro? So you are a psychic because you started talking about him seconds before that ended up on the screen. That's brilliant. So here's what I'm thinking you should talk about next. Never mind. Anyway, I'm going to go back to that Springfield thing for a minute. When we took the photo op with you, I'm going to call it the smush face. You stand between the people. And what? Is that like your favorite signature move? Did that come out of boredom or brilliance? What was that about?
I don't think of it as a signature move. I just like smushing faces. Is that so wrong?
No, it's not wrong.
God,
I thought, it opens up opportunities because people could be like, they could do like an awkward counter face, or they can just be like, grandma's pinching my cheek. It's funny. Right. And then your face is just like, this is the right thing to do in this moment.
It just feels so right. Well, I've always been, you've heard the theory of the 5 love languages, right? You've got, let's review them real quick, may we?
Yes, please.
Physical touch is one. Words of affirmation. I love you. I love you. Quality time. Doesn't matter what we're doing as long as we're together. Acts of service. I love you, so I'll wash the car and mow the lawn. Or gifts, giving and receiving of gifts. I love you, here's a watch. So out of those 5 love languages, physical touch is my strong one, with words of affirmation coming close behind. So that's why I like to do good you boo. I pet people, I hug people. So when it comes to the convention appearances, like the one you were at in Springfield, by the way, I had such a great I love Springfield, Missouri. And I love all of Missouri. I also did a convention in Kansas City shortly after that, only months later. And the same kind of like, again, from the Midwest, this Midwestern vibe. It's like, oh, these are my people. I feel right at home here. Anyway, but when there's a line of people waiting to meet me at a convention, that means that they paid money to get into the convention. They waited in line for an hour, which is, no one should have to do. And then they get up to my table and they might have paid for a photo op or an autograph. They've gone through a lot to meet me. And that not just today, but before this, they've watched things I've been in. They've supported my career with DVD sales and tuning in when something's on network television or streaming it from a platform here and there. That means the world to me. That if it wasn't for that, I would not have a career. So I owe everyone in that line all the hugs and face smushes I can muster up. That's how I feel.
That is wonderful, and it cannot. My opinion, it cannot be faked. It's so genuine. It's wonderful, and we thank you for it. I'm going to take a quick sidebar and remind everyone of the fundraising opportunity here, benefiting One Simple Wish. You should see that scrolled across the bottom. OneSimpleWish.org. They can be quite simply simple wishes. This is not necessarily an extravagant gift. You don't have to make a huge donation to make a big difference. So please take a moment now or after this hour and consider review at onesimple.org. Back to questions.
Well, I'm seeing one at the bottom of the screen here. Is there
here's
any
a new one,
truth to the rumor that you will be spawn of Svengoolie? Is anyone aware of this? I did. Svengoolie, I think he started as a Chicago local late night horror movie host, and he's nationwide now. I can't remember what network he's on, but they had a competition. I think maybe a little over a year ago, 2 years ago, that they were letting people submit audition tapes to be spawn of Svengoolie, like the up and coming next Svengoolie, and I submitted a tape, but they asked me to as a part of the promotion for the thing. I wasn't actually vying for the position, although now that hooked Svengoolie and I together. We follow each other on Twitter now, and he's a delightful man. I can't wait to meet him in person one day.
Excellent. I got a little side note there that Svengoolie is available to be seen on MeTV.
MeTV, there it is. Yeah, thank you.
And secondly, our current donation amount is $800. Let's see if we can raise that some more. Oh, and one of our moderators said your video was awesome.
Oh, thank you so much.
So I was thinking, in the general sense of your career and what you're doing, how would you feel in an otherworldly sense if you had been a vaudeville actor in New York instead of a Hollywood movie actor? Do you think that with your sense of motion and everything that could have been something you would have enjoyed?
Yes, I think that I was probably born a little bit too late. If I had been born in that era, I would have definitely been a vaudevillian. I'm sure of it. And because SAG is striking now, and I can't talk about specific titles and characters. I'm sorry for the timing of this, but Bill Irwin, who is a renowned vaudevillian with his mime skills and his clowning skills, and he's also been an actor in several movies and TV shows over the years. He joined us on a particular series that I'm a series regular on. Set in outer space. he was also he was a member of my species. So when they wanted to cast him, he was kind of on the fence about it and wanted to talk to me first. So when I heard that Bill Irwin wanted to talk to little old Doug Jones, I was like beside myself. So it was a fantastic phone call. He was so gracious and kind. And I talked him through the process of what it is to become this particular type of alien, and the trials and tribulations we go through during the day. And he was no stranger to prosthetic makeup, but he just wanted to know what was this one about. And he'd seen some episodes with me in them, and figured it out. So we ended up luring him into the show as a guest star for like about 3 episodes. So I could not get enough of him. Like I just wanted to pick his brain every second of the day. Like, what do I, being
he's getting a quick shout out. I saw Bill Irwin in Bye Bye Birdie on Broadway, says Kristen.
There you go. Yeah. He's just absolutely amazing. And so yeah, but I think it's that clowning kind of mentality. When you have an audience, even if it's a small 5 people in your house, in your living room, you must be on and perform for them. That's that vaudevillian kind of vibe that does it. It's driven me a time or two in my life. Yes.
Yeah. Does that particular what you just said? Does that ever? I'm not sure how I want to say this. Some people feel like they have to be on, and then some of the people that know them really well are like, okay, you don't have to be on right now. Do you? I mean? I think you might use your telepathic powers where I'm going with this. It seems like sometimes it's a burden or it's a blessing, depending on the audience. Like you go out to dinner and you're like, they're looking at me. Should I do something silly with my fork, or should I just enjoy my meal and leave?
Right. I have felt that compulsion in my life. Yeah. Now I'm 63 years old now, so I have matured into a place where I don't feel like I have to be on. In fact, I enjoy not being on now. When it's the right time and place, yes. But when someone's when I found that when I'm on all the time, it can exhaust people, and it exhausts me too, because I'm actually I tend to tip into the introvert side of the scale. more than the extrovert side. Even though I present extrovertedly, I really live in the introverted half of that scale. So being on around other people just saps me of all my energy. So I find that if I don't put the pressure on myself, like I must perform for everybody, if I don't make myself do that, then it's like, life is a bit easier. Yeah. A little bit more fun to live. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, if you were at a party with a whole bunch of people in a big room and you're on, it could be for the 3 people that are standing right next to you. It doesn't have to be,
Right.
Hey, I'm about to do a thing.
No,
Because-
exactly. No, exactly.
And that's not a bad thing in any way, because those 3 people are like, you missed out. And that's that. But I'm glad that you mentioned the introvert part, because that's sometimes how I feel about myself is in my own circle, I'm on a lot. And there was finally, anyone that knows me will understand that it took a long time for me to reach a maturity level where I should let someone else tell the punchline. I don't always have to be the funny guy. I can be the butt of the joke if it's not mean. You got to know. Oh, I'm going to interrupt myself for a question. One of my favorite questions to ask is, who is the most famous person in your phone? I've loved meeting you at so many cons. Thank you for joining us. That's Doug Hubler right there.
Yeah.
Most famous person in your phone.
My phone's right here. Can you see that? That's Guillermo del Toro.
Nice. Oh,
that's my
he's calling right now?
screensaver. with both of us holding Oscars. Yeah, I also have a ton of actors in there, but that I've worked with or met somewhere, and that, but they usually are under code names, so you can't find them in my phone.
Right. Yeah, if we can do not breaking any rules. I was at a convention and I met a particular actor, and I mentioned a role by dropping a line, which is actually the title of the episode. And he's like, no, he goes, right now I'm texting with the guy from the show. And it turned out that he ended up on another episode. So I think I was at the dawn of that one. Another question. I know you cannot speak of roles you have done, but can you discuss roles you have turned down and why you passed on them? Ooh,
a couple recently, a couple of more recent movies. But it was all for good, happy reasons. I was living in Toronto, working on a TV series for more than half the year for about 6 years. During that time, a few movie offers came that I just couldn't do because of simply timing. One of them was a recent vampire movie that came out, The Voyage of the Dedemer. Another one was a little horror movie that came out called Barbarian. And each of those but the roles that they were asking for me were played by friends of mine, Javier Botet, and also he was in the vampire movie, and the gross basement dweller in the other movie was Matthew Patrick Davis. So I have met with so many younger, tall, skinny guys that come looking for me, going, I want to do what you do. Can I pick your brain? My brain's been picked clean, so please don't. But I if I see, if someone reaches out to me and I see promise, I will do my best to make time for them. But I just can't. I can't talk to everybody. It's like I would have to open a school and have a new chapter of life if I were going to like answer everybody who asked me for advice or whatever. But but those few that I have taken the time to meet with have been successful, and I've been very, very proud of them. So if I've said no to something, it's often one of those younger folk that I've mentored that will come up and do that role, which it's all win-win for me.
That's funny. I can't get over the fact that everything I'm thinking, you're like, oh, let me go ahead and say it before you mention it. I was like thinking about my daughter was questioning, and she and I were on the same page of given your role as and such and the mobility. I was thinking about flexibility, and is it yoga? Is it this? Is that? And you're talking about mimes, and suddenly you're like, I'd have to open a school. And I'm like, that's exactly what I was thinking was going to be my next point, is like, obviously there is a transition you could do at some point if you wished to, but you're certainly not done with what you're doing right now. But,
Right.
a seminar, something like that would probably just be flooded with people that just be insane about trying to learn
very
something.
Very sweet of you to say. The thought has crossed my mind, of course, especially the older I get. Now, I am being way more picky now with the rubber bits roles that I say yes to. So I am slowing down with that, just because I want to explore more human characters. As an actor, I don't plan on ever retiring. I plan to do the Betty White thing, you know. I want to act into my 90s if I live that long. But I would like to explore more of those comedic human characters that are out there waiting for me, that I've also been able to play already. Love to do more of that. But then speaking gigs and workshops are a thing that I've been doing some more of now, especially during the SAG-AFTRA strike. I've had more time to say yes to opportunities that would, like for instance, I'm going to be going to Chicago in a couple of weeks to teach a workshop at one of the nation's largest haunts, like a big haunted house there. They have a school they work out of this haunted house year round, and so they're going to have me come in for a workshop. So I'm very excited about that, and more opportunities like that. Yeah.
We got a question on screen that's been hanging out for a little while, and you can answer at your own peril. What code name do you think other people use for you and your phone?
I have in their phones. I have no idea. Let's see. Scarecrow.
Here comes this. Yeah, the self-deprecating answer.
Exactly. Tall, skinny, goofy guy.
How about we just answer another question then? Were you a horror or science fiction fan growing up?
I would, I'm more a fan of feel goods, like happy endings, comedic, musical things. But when it comes to horror and science fiction, I would call myself a casual fan, where a channel flipper who lands on something and gets engrossed in it, So we in Indianapolis, Indiana, where I grew up, we had a hosted Friday night horror movie show. Sammy Terry was the host. Hello, children. And so we would stay up late and watch these, dark movies. The first horror movie that I ever remember seeing was The Mummy with Boris Karloff. And that man haunted me for days after that. So that, and then The Creature from the Black Lagoon was the next one I remember seeing. Which also haunted me in such a beautiful kind of way. Something about the aquatic water part of that creature was so beautiful. And so later in my career, I got to play a couple of fishmen that kind of fulfilled that dream in me to carry that legacy forward. So yes, I would say I'm a fan, but as my career has been largely science fiction and horror and comic books and fantasy, when I come home at the end of those work days, I like to turn on light, fluffy, cable channels that have silly Christmas movies and happy endings. Yeah.
Right. There was someone I got to interview this year, and I asked him about being immersed in something that was painful. As an actor, you're in the role, and then how does it carry over? And he said that his acting teacher, one of his acting teachers, told him, "Here's a board. Stand on it. It's only an inch tall. You're the character. Now step back off. You're you again. Just leave it on. If it was sports, it'd be leave it on the court. You can give it all you got, but that's not you. So don't be carried by the burden." So in some ways, I think you come home and flip on a happy movie is the proper transition from "ooh, what a day." Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it was a way for me to, because I get asked all the time. There are actors out there who have it's been in the news that they've been affected by roles they've played, and they might go down a spiral with
terrible things.
Terrible things, right? So I've played a lot of dark things in my life, and I get asked all the time, has any of that gone home with you? And absolutely not. I've been very blessed to be able to clock out at the end of the day, and just go back to work the next day. But when I'm home, without that cloud around my head.
I want to address the question on screen in just a moment. Quick sidebar on your end thought there. If you spent that much time in the darker roles and you go home, are you afraid of the dark? Or are you like, come, friends?
The dark doesn't scare me at all. No. Because I've seen the other side of the dark. I know how it works.
There you go. Question on screen. You mentioned musicals. Do you have a favorite musical?
Oh, dear.
Here we go.
When it comes to my favorite stage musical, I think that I've seen the most times on stage would be Phantom of the Opera, and then another, but like childhood happy memory musical movies would be like The Sound of Music. Yeah, Julie Andrews, loved that woman. Yeah.
Another question on screen. We'll do it from rapid fire. Who were your favorite performers growing up? Who inspired you?
Yeah, well, again, I mentioned them earlier, Dick Van Dyke and the Carol Burnett Show. Oh my gosh, I never missed an episode of that.
Yes.
Conway
and Corman,
and Vicki Lawrence, and Harvey
Tim
Korman
Conway,
and Tim Conway.
Yeah.
Just utter brilliance coming out of them every week. And the thought of going to work and laughing all day really, really inspired me. But honestly, Don Knotts, that he was the one I related to the most. It's like I actually felt like I looked like him, skinny neck, big lips, bug eyes, and the confidence to be as funny as he wanted to be. I just really admired him. Yeah,
that's good. I recently had reason to revisit a bunch of the Me TV stuff, and if you will, and the Andy Griffith Show, and I watched Barney again and again and again for several weeks, and I was just like, man, these shows were good.
Yeah, they were.
And he took the butt of the joke, but he was as sincere as it can be. He wasn't dumb. He just did dumb things, you know, and it was a great line to walk as a character, as a person, whatever you want to say. Now, given some roles that we're not going to talk about, we'll take a different approach. Because I thought about it, and I ran this one past my wife, and she thought it was pretty good, and then we both answered it. If you had this is a would you rather.
Okay.
The precursor would be you're perfectly safe, nothing bad will happen, you'll come out the way you went in, life is good. But would you rather be in a vessel exploring the ocean, underwater, seeing all the creatures, the rocks, the everything, the unknown, or would you rather walk on the surface of another planet, but you'd be by yourself, just walking around, totally safe? Do you have a would you rather on that?
Yeah, safety is key on both of those for me. Underwater or outer space, huh? Yeah, wow, I think for because of my fascination with water and the characters I've played that are water-based, I'd probably go down. I'd probably take the dive. If nothing could go wrong. It's implosions.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, worst case scenario, it's a virtual reality headset. But if it was real, my personal choice. Go ahead.
Right. There's so much yet to explore right here on this planet that I've never seen before. That I don't need to leave. Yeah.
Yeah. Given that it's still perfectly safe, I would still opt for the planet, just because I feel like I'd rather just walk around and be alone and think.
You'd have some good stories.
Yeah, because I don't know. Water has never been my friend. I've never had a bad experience. I just don't like it. You know, you got to drink it to survive. That's as far as I want to go with it.
Right.
Question on the screen. Do you remember the age and instance that made the decision, this is the career for me? And I think we may have sort of answered this, but let's go for it again.
Yeah, well, I've gone back and forth not knowing if this is the career for me many times, like questioning, did I make the right decision? It's probably not the right thing. Oh, but then the next month you get a good gig and it's like, this is the right career for me. But let's go all the way back to high school. First time I walked out on stage and got a guffaw laugh from an audience, I was hooked. That would have been my junior year fall play. It was a play called A Time for Madness. And it was a family setting in a living room, that was the main set of the play. And the college daughter brought home from college for like a little break, her new boyfriend. That was me. I had a big silly afro wig, and I was like kind of a hippie and had a headband and like sunglasses and like, hey. And anyway, so upon my entrance, the audience guffaw laughed, and they laughed at everything that I did the entire show. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could live like this forever. Yeah.
Right. So the second you walked out, you hadn't even said a word. You just
I walked through the door and the laughter started immedially.
So it starts with appearance, which is interesting that then a lot of your career becomes appearance, but it's not your face. But those that know, you know. Yeah. So you had mentioned that you're interested in more roles that are more you, more personal,
Mhm.
more believable, more human, etc. Your face, if you will. At what point might you have had the point in your career where you started getting recognized, or oh my gosh, can I get a picture with your autograph? Just the casual on the street. If you were known a lot for being in makeup.
Right. I went under the radar for many years of my career, decades of my career, and I think it was like in the maybe like in 2006 when a particular Spanish language movie came out and made it was very popular and made its run to the Oscars, through the Golden Globes, Oscars, all of it. And I was a part of the press machine and being interviewed with this face for that role. And then that's when people could like go, oh, didn't he? They look you up on their WeberNet devices and say, oh, he also played this and that and this and that. So that's happened a couple of times. More, and then in 2017, 18, same thing happened again with another Oscar movie that I was in. That did a whole run through the Golden Globes and the Oscars, and then another at the same time a TV series was just starting, a science fiction space show that was rather popular. So I was getting a lot of the more press that I did with this face and talking about this role, that role, and then a lot of the, especially around the Oscar time, 2018, with that particular movie that Guillermo del Toro directed brilliantly. That press, those press months were full of high profile platforms and media, entertainment websites and network shows that were entertainment based doing pieces on me. They would do tons of retrospective pieces. You didn't know you saw him, but you've seen him in all these things. A lot of those pieces and magazine articles and newspaper articles were being done that kind of tied my 30-some year career together and said, and here he is in this current thing. That's when I started getting stopped in airports and shopping malls, at the grocery store. Like, hey, are you? That started happening way more. And so I've enjoyed both. My lovely Mrs. Lori and I have discussed this before, that like, early in one's career, you think like, oh gosh, is anybody going to recognize me? I hope they do. And when they don't, it's kind of like, but then I enjoyed that. I got to the place where, no, I really liked being able to have a Hollywood career, then go to Starbucks and nobody knew who I was. That was kind of like ideal.
Right.
Consistent employment and a private home life. It was really great. But then when more recognizability came in and more recognition on the street came in, I never cause a mob scene, so it's never gotten out of hand. It's just enough that it's like kind of sweet when it happens. But it didn't start happening until I was in my late 40s. And by that time, I'm like, well, you know what? I'm glad this didn't happen in my 20s. I don't know what that would have done to my head. Now, in my late 40s, I'm aware that, like, fame is fickle. Fame will date you for a while and then drop you and go for the next thing, the next, the younger, prettier thing. And that's fine. Right. I'm fully aware of that. My life does, and my success, my happiness does not hinge on fame. If it did, then that's why people who do hinge their lives on their fame, when that fame fades or goes away, what do they have? And that's when you hear these horrible stories of people and what they've done to themselves. So my family, my faith in God, my close friends, those things are so much more important to me. That's who I am. And acting is what I do, and I enjoy it. So if there's notoriety that day, great. If there's not, great.
Yeah. When you do decide to have those seminars and such, please lead with that monologue to start, because that was textbook how to be a happy human right there. That was wonderful.
Thanks.
And we're going to try to make some more other humans happy. We're going to make another note about One Simple Wish as the benefactor of our event this weekend. Please consider donations. The information is at the bottom of the screen. Shout that out there. And I had a note about something since we're. I think we can sidebar and actually maybe talk about a project here, because at one point, I remember watching a YouTube series that was sort of movie serial-esque. That starts to turn a couple of bells there. That you helped out some independent filmmakers with, and it was, what was it called?
I've done so many web series over the years. I'm trying to think. I can't.
There was the danger element.
Oh, the danger. We could talk about that. Yes, that was such. Yeah. What was the name of the Westbrook or
right?
Is that right? And
yeah, I think so.
John Allen Soares.
There you go.
Was the director writer kid that I met at a convention. Met him at San Diego Comic-Con, and he started sending me like, hey, do you want to be in this? And look at some of the work we've done before. Goofy, funny, silly, everything I love. And so I've done a couple of things with him. I also was in a web series he did called Sock Baby. I was in Sock Baby part 4, I think. Yeah. And then the danger element was a web series that then he compiled it together to make a movie out of it. And I'm not sure if I'm not sure where that's available right now. Might be Tubi or something. I'm not sure. Yeah. Love it though. Love it. I like independent filmmakers kind of have a special place in my heart, because when if you've written something and you try to push it and sell it to a network or a big studio, it can be a thankless and hard road. But then when you say, let's just make this ourselves, that is an independent spirit that I really love and admire. And then you also have the freedom to make whatever movie you want. You might be on a tight budget, yes, but you can also have the freedom to creatively make whatever you want without a studio head saying, here's what we want. And we've been going over the notes and here you don't have to worry about that. So that's the part of independent production that I love, is that you get to a really pure storytelling from the perspective of the filmmaker. And I love being a part of that.
And then, of course, obviously at this point, you would have decades of experience. Not that you would push it on anybody, but you would have a lot of things you could teach somebody just by being there and being part of it. If it's someone that's young and new and not as experienced, but they get that pure part, but they don't have the experience to go with it.
Right. Exactly.
A question about your performances in general. Sometimes you'll watch somebody and they'll go, oh yeah, I kind of lived in that moment, but I never did see the finished product. Do you watch your own performances? Do you watch your movies? Do you like them?
I do watch them. I don't always like myself, but I know lots of actors who don't like to watch themselves, but I feel like I have to, even as painful as it may be to watch myself. I want to learn and grow and get better at what I do, and if I can pick out my mistakes, which I do with great ease, then that's something I can make sure and make that note for next time. That now let's trust your instincts more, or work that comedic moment. Your timing was a bit off, or physicality. Like, gosh, had you put one more tick of energy into that particular move, that might have worked better. Those are things I really have to watch.
Right, but then you also have the idea that the director is like, oh, we could do another take if it really matters to you, but I got what I wanted, but that's not necessarily what you want.
Right, but then that depends on the director and how much trust I have in them. So, if a director who knows what he or she is doing says, "Oh, we got it," a lot of the directors will not move on to the next scene until they know that they've got everything they need for this one. And I have to trust them sometimes. Like, gosh, I know I had something else in me, but and then I'll watch the finished product and go, yep, they were right. They worked. It totally worked.
Question on screen. Can we talk McDonald's commercials?
Sure can. Commercials are not part of the issue, the strike issue at the moment. So the Mac Tonight campaign for McDonald's was a 3-year campaign that went from I'm going to say December of '86 into the middle of 1990. And then came back again for a couple of commercials in 1997. But But I did 27 commercials as Mac Tonight, which is this crescent moon-headed character from McDonald's that sang at a piano, when the clock strikes, hey, 6:30, babe. So I ended up buying my first house with McDonald's money. So God bless them for employing this young, goofy actor. Then that was my fourth TV commercial booking I ever got in my first year of acting. Was that McDonald's campaign. And that was the campaign then. Not only did it become very popular for McDonald's, and then that commercial ended up going worldwide. And it played, like I said, in many countries for about 3 years. And during that time, the creature effects makeup people who created the Moonhead and puppeteered the Moonhead, they would ask for help on the commercial shoots from people from other creature effects shops. They would come and work with me on the Mac Tonight campaign, and then go back to those creature shops, having worked with me. If they would see some tall, skinny creature coming through a design that they were hired to do for a movie or TV show, and be like, I just worked with this guy on that Mac Tonight campaign. And that's when I would get a call. So I really, McDonald's was very good to me. Yeah.
That's a sweet deal early on to, again, you had a day job for a while, and then you get this, it puts some pretty good money in the bank while you're still trying to figure out where to go from there.
Right. Yeah, exactly right.
Here's a fun question. Have you ever been mistaken for another celebrity?
That is a great question. I feel like I'm pretty much a one-off in my look, but I have been equated with John Waters more times than I can count. Director John Waters. Of course, he has a little pencil mustache, and but we do have very, very similar facial features and tall, skinny.
Admittedly,
necks.
I was thinking that exact.
Were you? There you go. Yeah. So someone else. I think I've also gotten the older I get and the more bony I get. I've been equated with David Bowie a time or two.
Ooh, good company.
Yeah, I think so. And when I was, and there was a musicians. There was like either a guitarist or a lead singer of some group that I didn't know of, and a security guard. I was walking into a building once, and a security guard goes, "Are you?" And I was like, "I don't know which you're referring to." He thought I was from some rock band, and he was sure of it. So I've been, and that person came up again, and now I can't remember who the heck it was. But anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, might have been dependent on the length of your hair at the time.
Exactly right. Yeah.
As far as your process goes, do you find a great difference when you're in heavy prosthetics or you're just you, when you're approaching a character? I know every character is different, et cetera, but does it seem like something that you developed different ways, or is it just like, you have your streamlined and it only varies because of makeup?
Well, I think if you're playing a character that's human and looks like this, or that is not human and comes with lots of prosthetic makeups, either way, I have to play that character from head to toe. So each character deserves his own physicality, his own visual vocabulary, as well as whatever dialogue you may or may not have. So there is a posture and a movement exercise that has to happen with each character. But when it comes to the farther you get from human, the more time you do have to put into developing, with this creature effects looks, how extensive is this look? How many protrusions do I have coming off of me, or how streamlined is it, and how is it on all fours? Am I up? Am I bipedal? Am I do I walk with? Am I a zombie who has an asymmetrical kind of walk, or what is it? So there's a lot that goes into more that goes into the rubber bits, I think, than the human thing probably. But still, I still have to affect a posture and a visual language for every character I play, whether it's human or not. Yeah.
Casting back just a couple of years, when the world took a time out, did you utilize any of that time to learn a different skill? Are you a fantastic cook by any chance?
I did. I was not one who baked bread at home during that time, but no. I've had an idea in my head for a novel for years, decades. And during the pandemic lockdowns, when I put my luggage away for the first time in years, I opened my laptop and I started typing this. I've got 4 chapters into a novel, and I have a literary agent who is interested in me writing my memoirs one day. And I gave him the novel, the first 4 chapters, and he said, "You're not barking up the wrong tree. This is good." He gave me some notes on my first time writer mistakes, but that was really. I can't wait to get back to that. I started, a TV show I was on started back in production, so I had to put the book away. But I'm anxious to get back to it now. Yeah,
that's excellent. There's a question on screen that, again, with the timing, I think, is there a book or story that you would like to turn into a TV show or movie? Not exactly your own story, but it seems that you have thought that process out.
Yeah, it's one that I was actually, there was a big studio here in Los Angeles that was had a book to movie story in development. This is back, gosh, I'm going to say this is back in the 1990s. I'm going to say the late 90s. And the book was called This Present Darkness by Frank Peretti. And it's a novel of kind of like angels and demons fighting it out over a small town, and the people in the small town didn't see what was going on, but there was like this 2 dimensions happening at the same time. Sure. And I was actually cast as the lead demon in that movie that was in development. And then at some point, the studio, for whatever reason, pulled the plug on it, and it never got made. So I would like to see This Present Darkness made into a movie eventually, finally. And if I could jump back into that role, I'd be happy to.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Took a look to the left at my notes. Unfortunate pause. I think I've asked almost every question I've got on paper. So we're doing great because it's 4:53. So we got about 7 minutes left.
Yeah.
I just feel like the question that's been in the back of my head is just going to blurt out. Do you tap dance?
I'm glad you asked that. No, I don't. But how much would I love to? So this is a bucket list thing for me. I would like to take a tap class, and because Fred Astaire was another one. Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly were just like, I was nuts about both of them watching old movies as a kid. And Fred Astaire especially, he had the panache, and he had a classy tailcoat kind of thing going on there. So I'm built more like him anyway. So yeah, I think if I could add tap to my repertoire, that would be
you'll be unstoppable.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Well, right along the bottom there, how is your singing voice?
My singing voice. Oh, thank you
for
the
trifecta.
I like to think that I'm great. In the shower, I'm fantastic. But I was actually a soloist at my church for many years before I started traveling for movies and TV shows so much, because I can't commit to anything weekly at the moment. But yeah, I sang at a lot of funerals and a lot of weddings and a lot of offertories during church services. Yeah, and actually, I got compliments. I don't know. You never know how good you are hearing yourself back. If I hear recordings of myself, it's like, ooh, that's horribly off key. But others seem to like it, so I'll let them have that.
That's interesting, because as you were saying that, the visual poured into my head that if it's in a church situation, there's not so much flamboyance necessarily, which means all the emotion that you're feeling gets channeled right through your voice and through your face, which, as we know, is incredibly expressive. The eyes, because the mouth's doing its thing, you got to get all through the eyes. It would have been magical to hear it, regardless of whether you thought it was on key or not.
Thank you. Very kind of you.
On screen, you remind me of a Donald O'Connor.
That is a humongous compliment. Thank you so much, Kristen. I loved Make Him Laugh was one of the best numbers in movie history. And my dad was a big fan of Donald O'Connor too. So when I was growing up in Indianapolis, Donald O'Connor came through doing a live one-man show. And so we went and saw it. I sat in the balcony and was like this, watching Donald O'Connor. So that's the biggest compliment you can give me. Thank you.
On the bottom, it says, I have read about your faith. I just want to say your sharing it is inspirational.
Oh, thank you so much
That's
for
very
that. I don't ever want to push my faith on anybody. It's not there for pushing; it's there for living. And if it comes up, it comes up, and I'm happy to talk about it.
Right. It's a simple concept. I kind of wish that was something that a lot of people understood. Is pick any subject, but especially religion. We can have a civil discussion. A civil discussion.
Civil keyword.
Right. Yeah. I want to ask you real quick about Donald O'Connor. We only got a couple minutes left. It seems like Make 'Em Laugh was just like ridiculous how good that was. Then you move on a few years to Francis the Talking Mule, and somehow it feels like there was a switch on the tracks that I didn't see coming. And I'm not saying he was unhappy or anything else, and you saw him in person, but that was an odd fix because at some point it just seemed like he wasn't doing song and dance anymore. But what do I know? I mean, that's what I recall as a kid seeing those movies on TV.
Right. Well, I'm known for wearing monster rubber bits, and I want to phase out of that and into more human roles. I will allow Donald O'Connor to go from that athletic, bouncing off walls, spinning in the air, falling on the floor. I'd let someone age out of that if they want to. I would.
Right. It's fair.
Yeah.
3 minutes to 5. We're going to say one more time, onesimple.wish.org, or One Simple Wish is our benefactor. We're going to give money to tonight. Look at the bottom of the screen, justgiving.com. You can make a big difference with a small donation.
I looked up One Simple Wish to see what they were all about, and I am very impressed with them. So I think what a worthwhile cause that is. Mrs. Lori and I recently this year adopted an adult. She's been in our lives for 21 years, and now we have a legal daughter now. So when it comes to kids and home life and not being ideal and what's their future and this touches my heart. So One Simple Wish is really doing something very, very right and good.
Excellent work there. One more thing on the screen says, and Donald did make him laugh as a smoker. I'm not completely sure.
I'm not sure what that means, love.
A typo, or just let that, just nodding politely and moving on. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if I remember correctly, I'm bringing it home here, back in Springfield. If I remember correctly, I said this to you when we left. I said, pirates should seek you out because you, sir, are a treasure.
Oh,
there it is.
Smush face. Thank you so much, Johnny. You put a whoop on the nose.
You are an excellent human being. This has been a fantastic hour. I really, greatly, truly appreciate the opportunity. This is wonderful. It was everything I hoped it could be. I hope you enjoyed it yourself. I hope everyone who watched enjoyed it. Anyone that didn't get to see it live, you should be able to watch it again on the stream later. You can watch the rerun. And good luck to you, sir. And I say thank you for your time today is on screen. Simply put, there it is. Thank you, good sir. Another round of applause. There it is. Moderator, I think it's up to you at this point. And we're going to thank you, Doug, on the side screen over there. So that was it with Doug Jones, and it was awesome. Totally awesome. And now we're on to our next guest, because I'm a twofer this afternoon. Michael Knightmage Wilson.
Hello.
Building in the house in the internet. Yeah. I'm gonna throw you the silliest curveball to start the whole thing. I'm gonna give you an apology.
Oh no.
Because when I was the MC at the costume contest in Metropolis, Illinois, when you were a guest, I was not ultimately familiar with you and was a little nervous and was given the wrong information. And I introduced you as Knightmage.
You know what? It's okay. Because honestly, so many people will just say nightmare. It's fine.
I think the event was over for about 30 seconds when someone raced up to me and said, "You have to apologize to him right now." I'm like, "What did I do?"
Well, you know what? Apology accepted.
Thank you, good sir. This is going to be another great hour. We're going to take a quick second to flip this page back over and remind everyone that One Simple Wish is getting the benefits of this weekend. And we want you to look at justgiving.com to make a donation. and it's a very good cause, and a small amount can make a big difference. So please consider that. All right, welcome again. Hello, how are you today?
I am excellent. It's Saturday. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm feeling all right. I've had a busy, crazy weekend so far, and the day ain't over yet, but I'm living in this moment, and I'm looking forward to it. So this is an interesting concept. That's not one of the 300 costumes you've made, I don't think. I'm just looking like a regular old jersey kind of shirt here.
I mean, this is kind of a costume. It's my everyday costume.
Well, there you go. Secret identity, et cetera, et cetera. So
now I'm going to feel bad. Like, were you expecting me in costume?
No, everything is a costume. I mean, you put on a smile, you're like, are you happy? Maybe it's a costume.
Well,
pull out of the nosedive. Pull out of the nosedive. Anyway, I thought we would just freeform this afternoon and just talk about anything and everything. I did make some notes I got off of your website. And I was looking at the fact that it said you made over 300 costumes in 11 years. And I tried to do the math on that and didn't understand how you had time to be doing anything other than making a costume, because that is an insane amount of sewing and crafting.
I'm going to be honest with you, I still don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you got like one of those magical thingies that turns back time and you're living, the same moment 3 times and you're doing 3 different things.
Everyone says like I have like little gremlins that just kind of come under my bed and just help me. I don't know. No, honestly, I don't know. I love crafting, but because I don't have a lot of time for like my off days and when I have nothing going on, I'll just wake up at like 8 in the morning and just start. And pretty much not eat or drink anything all day and just keep going to the wee early morning.
Oh my gosh. Why don't you we'll narrow that down a little bit. How about let's take like the generic, if you will, process. You wake up one morning and you go, ooh, I have an idea. And then go. I mean, do you think it through for a while? Is it a couple of days, a couple of weeks, months before you start on one? Or can you think of it and then just I got this and I got this. I'm going for it today.
Usually an idea will come probably about 2 to 3 weeks before I'll start it. And that's another reason why I have to work quick, because I'm like squirrel. Like I have to get it done, because if I don't, my mind's going to jump to something else. And just that quick, I won't get it done. So as soon as I think of something, like I have to start planning it out and get it done. I think the longest idea I've had just in my head is maybe a month. And that was just because I had other stuff going on and I really wanted to get this costume down. I think it was RoboCop. I really wanted to get it done. I just had a lot of other stuff, going on. But typically it's like a 2-week term.
It's so impressive. I got some foam sitting on the table over in the other room that's been there for about 3 weeks because life keeps getting in the way. But the deadline hasn't. Yeah.
As long as you don't have a deadline, honestly, there's no rush.
Right.
I just personally I have to get it done because I won't do it if I don't.
Yeah. And I would think at some point you might be away from the project. You're having dinner, you're at work or whatever, and your brain suddenly goes, well, I can do this. And you're like, ugh. I mean, I'll go to bed and a joke pops into my head. I'm like, if I don't write it down, I'm going to forget it by the morning. So you sound like you're motivated. I got to keep going.
That's actually something I started doing probably during the pandemic times, was if I had an idea in the middle of the night, I would start writing it down, because it got to the point where I had ideas and I'll wake up the next morning like, I knew I was thinking about something. It was an awesome idea, but I'm like, I can't remember. So I honestly, I started writing it down, and it helped. It helped a lot.
It's incredibly frustrating. And the other half of that is I'll go, okay, and I'll say the line, the joke or the thought or the whatever, don't forget to do, over and over. And suddenly there's this mantra and you can't sleep, or your dreams get haunted because you put your brain in a different rhythm. Now, as far as all those costumes go that you made over the years, have you parted ways with many of them, or what's your storage situation for something like that?
Oh, they're my babies. I can't part ways with them. Pretty much, I have all of them. I have every costume except for one I repurposed for something else. But I keep them all. So I it kind of started off with my one. I had a small 2-bedroom apartment, and so my 1 bedroom was just all totes. Like it started, with 1 tote, 2 totes, 3 totes, 4, and then by the end, the entire room was nothing but like bins, labeled bins. So I ended up getting a storage unit, and then I ended up getting the biggest storage unit that place had. It got too overwhelming. Ended up getting a house, and so now my storage unit is pretty much my basement. So like one side of my basement is about close to 100 different totes, and they're all labeled. So it's just like an organized mess. And then on the other side of the basement is a huge hanging rack for like all the clothes.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was wondering if you tend to make things that can be folded up well, or do you don't even let that hold you back? You can hang things up because some materials are going to be very compacted and they're not going to wrinkle, but others are just.
Oh yeah, no, I specifically make things with the idea of, can I fly with this? How am I going to store this? There's some things that like, obviously I just can't store, and I'm just like, listen, I just really want to make this, and it's just I'll figure out a way, but that's very far and few between. But mostly I kind of have a forethought of like how I'm going to store this and how I have to make it in order to store it.
Right. Now, understand this is probably going to fall out a little awkward, but this is not meant to be rude in any way.
There is nothing awkward, I assure you.
I have met you. You're a good, solid, tall, muscular fellow.
All right, this might be awkward. I don't know. Okay.
You don't let that hold you back. You just pick a costume. It doesn't have to be a character that's built like you. You just go, all right, this is what I want to be. And then it's brilliant. I mean, I'm trying to make a compliment here, but I'm also trying to understand how that process works.
So I'm very much of the mindset of cosplay is really just your fan art of the character. And you look at fan art and you take a character, that character has been drawn so many different ways, even if it's not fan art, even like just take Batman. Batman has been redesigned and thought of thousands of different ways in different mediums and stuff. So how come cosplayers can't do the same? How come cosplayers can't redesign and a character in their own vision, right? So to me, that's exactly what we're doing. We're creating fan art. So, how come, honestly, like a She-Hulk can't look like me on like an alternate Earth, right?
Right, yeah.
So
another Earth.
That's literally the way I approach it. It kind of didn't hit home with me to start doing that and really like push that until I was doing a charity event, and this was years ago. This was probably back in like 2014. I was doing a charity event, and it was an anti-bullying event for a school. And I've done a few before and stuff. It was fine. I was Batman. And after the event, about 2 weeks later, one of the teachers contacted me and said, hey, kids loved it. There's one kid in particular that's enamored. And he just kept saying, like, oh my God, like Batman looks like me. I could be Batman. Mm-hmm. The school is a predominantly white school. And so there was one black kid that was just took home to that Batman skin tone and stuff, It didn't hit me till then that how much representation really matters. And that just comes in all forms. So that kind of really what pushed me to do characters that aren't traditionally seen a certain way. And then once I started doing that more and more, I've seen other people kind of become inspired by that and say, oh my God, I really wanted to do this character, but I didn't know if I could do it because of my size or whatever it is. But, seeing you do characters made me do it. So that still now pushes me to still kind of, I don't want to say push the envelope because that's the wrong phrasing, but to just think outside the box of what I can and can't do. Like, honestly, sky's the limit, man.
Right, yeah. With the commitments that you have based on this, and you don't necessarily have to answer this in any particular way, but does your employer ever roll their eyes and go, again with the time off or anything? You know what I'm saying?
No, not now. So when I very first started, with the time off stuff, that was never the issue. They love what I do. So I'm pretty much very vocal about my day job. It's not like a secret or anything. And so like the community knows what I do. And so whenever I'm doing anything, they're pretty much mentioned too. So it's actually like, it's like good PR for them as well. So they very much love what I do. Now, as far as like the content that I do and what I do, that's a different story. So, just law enforcement in general, the personality is a very kind of type A personality. So at first it was very much like, oh my God, you're dressing up in tights, like, but kind of that type of mentality. But once they actually start seeing like the things I was doing, places I was going, people I was meeting, it became like, oh, how was your weekend? And then now it became kind of now that like the geeks are kind of the popular kids now. And I kind of credit that to cosplay, the boom of cosplay, and just like superhero movies in general. But now it's like, no, there's a convention coming up. Can you help me with my costume? Or like, hey, my kid's having a birthday party. Like, you stop by. So now it's very much a like every day someone's asking, well, hey, what's your next event? And they're very much interested in this entire kind of lifestyle. So it's kind of really come full circle.
Excellent. On the screen, thank you for joining us. Please consider donating to help us reach our goals. And there is the link. We currently have $800 donated, and that is excellent, but I think we can do better.
Yes.
Now back to the interview. That kind of what you were just, the last couple things you said, let's push those together. I had a question that said, have you met a costumer who has progressed in ability over time, sort of a then and now comparison that may or may not have said, hey, I like what you do. I'm getting into it. And then you meet him like 2 years later. And you're like, wow, I'm impressed how far you come on your own kind of thing. Have you met someone that you've had sort of a relationship like that, sort of a mentor or a guide?
This is going to sound like a really cheesy, like cop-out answer, but it's truly not. Man, just the community in general, period. Like, there are so many people that I've met, back in 2012, 2013, when I first started doing this. And I think that was kind of like the boom. Like, that was when like people really started getting into it. Where to see where they're at now, and not even like necessarily craftsmanship wise, but just to see the way they've progressed their personality and the way they've navigated the whole social media thing, and just the influence that they are now. It's absolutely incredible to see. So there's the community in general, seeing it grow. Is just absolutely fascinating.
Whoops, I looked at the wrong question. Got myself flustered. I'm going to give it a second here.
I have that effect on people. That's fine.
Oh, here we go. This kind of plays into that. I wrote down, do you only make costumes for yourself? Considering a lot of people have learned how to do this and they pride themselves in doing their own, what's your relationship with other costumers in regard to helping people out with literally the costume?
Yeah. So I do only do it for myself per se. I do love teaching. So like at conventions, 100%. I always love doing panels and workshops. I'm always encouraging people to message me, and I can help out if I can. If I can't, then I'm gonna point you to the direction of someone who can. But I love being a teacher. But as far as like doing commissions, I can't. It's because I make costumes for myself and for my vision. And even if someone says, hey, I really love that Spawn costume, can you make me one just like that? No, because I feel like it would not be to your standards. And it's everything I do is to my standards. And to me, my standards are pretty low. So even if you don't think my standards are low, it's high. If I make something for someone else, I'm thinking that you're not going to like it. And it's just, maybe it's a mental block there, but so pretty much just myself. Now I do commissions as far as like companies. Like right now I'm working on one costume. They approached me and I'm making that. But again, it's for me. It's for me to wear, so I can make it to my standards per se. But as far as like making it for someone else to wear, that gives me chills. I can't do it.
Yeah. I think I understand where you're coming from in that. So let's leave them out for a second. Let's go back to you alone. Take you at your first costume. what did you know going in? Now you're 300 costumes later. Are you completely refined on your technique, and that's why you can do it so fast, or have you massively evolved? What was the sort of progression there?
No, and it's funny. I see a lot of people kind of do the then and now, you know, costume transition stuff, and I honestly think that my craftsmanship and technique and stuff is the exact same. I learn new things, but I think the way I go about making things is pretty much the exact same. Like there's literally nothing's changed. Like maybe, you know, I've just gained more skills and know how to do different things, but as far as like refining, it's still the same. I'm very much a 10-foot rule cosplay. And basically what that means is that my friend Super Casey, we kind of used to always joke about this because she's a 10-inch rule. But so 10 feet away, I look amazing. In photos, I look amazing. Do not come up 10 inches inspecting things because my seams are going to be, you know, crooked. Things are going to be straight. There's going to be hot glue strands, you know, that type of stuff. You know, and Super Casey, she was very much a 10-inch rule. So she wants you to come up and check her seam. She wants you to see those fine, small details and see how perfect they are. And I think that's also why I am so fast, is because I live by that rule. Like I don't need it to be perfect. Now, if, you know, if it's for a company or if it's for a costume contest or something like that, that's a totally different story. But if I'm making something just for fun, and I'm going to make it work to a convention for 6-7 hours, and then I'm going to throw it in my closet for 10 months and not think about it, I don't need to be perfect.
Okay, that's fair. This is a good question, sort of a segue, but still relevant. On screen it says, what about a specific character has inspired you to costume as them? Since you have 300 choices to choose from, pick a good one for us.
You know what? I'm going to go Superman. Superman is one of my favorite characters of all time. And it's literally just because he is that big blue Boy Scout. He is good. He is what is the best in all of us, you know, and still watching, you know, Christopher Reeve as Superman gives me chills every single time. That is the character that if I could be any character, personality wise, ability wise, anything like that, that's the character I want to be. So yeah, this being Superman is really, and actually doing Metropolis, and just as silly as it sounds, walking in the parade in the Superman outfit, you know, next to Jonathan as Superman, that literally was like the highlight of the year for me. That was just absolutely amazing, you know. So yeah, Superman.
Excellent. This is another good question on here. We'll get into the crafty aspect. What are your favorite crafting tools? Do you prefer hand sewing, sewing machines, tapes, glues, etc.? Kind of break down your process for us.
So if I had to go with like one thing, I really can't just go with one thing. That's a lot. I use a lot. So hand sewing versus sewing machines. Sewing is probably like my weakest. I hate sewing. But I would say sewing machine is probably going to be the best, only because it's faster. Hand sewing is fine for smaller details and stuff, but yeah, machine wise. If I had to pick like one tool that I use on pretty much everything, it's going to be a twofer. It's going to either be hot glue. You know, I will hot glue the crap out of it, pretty much anything. And an airbrush. I love airbrushing. I just love putting those small finishing paint details on. So yeah, those are two like go-tos.
Okay. Do you find if you're airbrushing, what are we talking, spandex? Because how do you get the model to look right? Do you have a physical model, a mannequin of your own that you would put the costume on to do that? Because, you know, you stretch and the paint's not where it needs to be.
So when I first started the idea of having the kind of airbrush look, I went to an airbrush artist, Josh Shaw, and he's the one who taught me how to airbrush. And so what first we would do is we put the suit on me, and he would airbrush me, and then we became like really really good friends. And so he taught me how to airbrush. So now what I'll do is I have a mannequin that I'll just put the bodysuit onto the mannequin. So that way, I do have a duct tape mannequin that's my body shape. So, airbrushing the muscle details on, I don't need to do, but I just do now. But putting it on, it's very much to myself. So if you were to put the suit on, it's not gonna sit 100% right because it's specifically to where my muscle would be.
Yes.
So yeah.
That's actually funny because there was a commentary track on a show I watched one time, and the gentleman was talking about being at Dragon Con, and he goes, I saw the most perfect Spider-Man, but it had the airbrush costume, and so it didn't look right. So he was both like, this is awesome and terrible at the same time because it was not meant for that specific person.
Yeah. So I know like with the sub-dye suits where like the definition and stuff is already printed on the suit. Those are sometimes specifically for that reason, it's hard because not everyone is it's not going to sit the same on everyone. So sometimes it could look like, you have an ab up here,
Right. Yeah.
But it's a cool, easy alternative too. If you don't want to airbrush or you can or don't have the ability, whatever it is.
Yeah, some people tell you like Christopher Reeve, of course, being the pinnacle of it for many of us, but no airbrushes, no extra seams, and spandex flattens muscles. He still looked amazing, but they've gotten away from that in the modern era. The costumes are just like we gotta make them look like the comic book does, but how are we gonna do it? Well, we're gonna sew this into it and that onto it and all that craziness. Do you still do mostly, I don't want to call it flat suits, but do you use a lot of extra appendages or whatever for certain aspects like that in muscular suits?
As far as like muscle padding and that type of stuff?
Yeah, like some things are meant to be armored. It's just the armored version of Batman.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I do. It just depends. It depends on the vision. It depends on how else, like everything else, how it sits. Again, I don't go for accuracy whatsoever. I literally will go with whatever I think will look decent on me. So, if every single drawing has a clear spot here, it's just like fabric, whatever. If I think armor is going to look cool here, then I'm putting armor there just because I want to do it. So yeah, there's 100% costumes I've done that where things are places probably you wouldn't see.
That actually is an interesting answer time-wise, because on screen, I think this might be an answer, maybe not the answer. What costuming secret can you share, that one tidbit that every cosplayer should know in regards to putting a suit together? And I think if I was to speak for you, it would be make it your own, but you go for it.
Yeah, honestly, that is make it your own. So I will always say that to me, like my job as a cosplayer is not necessarily just to bring your vision or someone else's vision to life. My job is really to make you believe that character always looked like me. So when I see a person in a costume, honestly, I'm not looking and saying that, man, that looks exactly like how that character looks on screen or in the comics. No, honestly, I'm looking at that individual saying, wow, that individual looks like Spider-Man or whoever, you know what I mean? So I want to see you as that character. I don't want to see someone else's drawing of that character. I really wanted to see you as it. Now, if like I said, accuracy, if that's your thing and that's what you want to do, that's cool. I'm not going to see someone else's artist rendition. I'm going to see you and your creation.
A lot of the photos that I looked at on your website show, like you say, it's your version, your vision, and some of them are just dramatically different. Like the She-Hulk, I think maybe it was Mortal Kombat and a Homelander and various others. they all sit perfectly well on you. They're dramatically different, and yet somehow there's a core, and that core has to be you. Whether
Right.
you're wearing a long wig, or you have funny contacts, or a beard, or anything. So, how do you do you bring a different approach when you're walking down the street? Do you try to mold to the character as a representation, not a costume, but as the way you're walking around, or you're just like, this is how I would do it because in this universe, this is me?
It depends. It depends on the character. Obviously, there's some characters you embody and you embrace more so than others, and there's other characters you just like the way they look. So, the Grinch. I do the Grinch a lot during Christmas time for charity events and stuff. I love doing the Grinch because you can ham it up, and I could just be a total jerk to everyone, and everyone loves it because that's the Grinch, right? But then there's other characters, like Kratos. I don't necessarily embody and act as Kratos. I just think I look really cool as Kratos. So I'm just, walking around as Kratos. So I think it just depends on the character. It depends on if you truly feel, like you embody that character. There's no right or wrong reason or thing to do. It just depends.
Okay. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the business of what you're doing. If you're making suits for yourself, you are the one-man show. How do you feel about the business aspect of it when you're busy making your costume? You got your work, you got to sleep, need to eat, but you got to get back to the con people. Yeah, sleep is. I'll explain what that word means later.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, when you're doing the business aspect, you got to go to a convention. You got to make time to do all the arrangements for yourself. Or do you? Do the conventions have more of a partnership? Like, just say yes and we'll handle the rest? How does that generally work?
It generally is to say yes, they'll handle the rest. So I have been fortunate where I've transitioned to the professional side cosplaying, where pretty much I just get booked for a convention, just like any other celebrity, performer, entertainer, whatever, and they do all the other plannings and stuff like that. My only thing then I have to worry about is just getting hacked, which that's a thing in itself. But yeah, so it's become pretty seamless. It's become pretty easy for me.
Mm-hmm. How long do you think it took before you started reaching something like that? You started making costumes, you started to get noticed, get respect, and then suddenly you're a guest. What was like the first time that you became a guest, and how was that for you? Was it kind of alien, or was it awesome?
I started, so my first time in a costume ever was like 2012 Halloween, and then in 2013 is when I started actually going to conventions, because before like that, I never heard of cosplay. I never been to a convention. I knew they existed. I just didn't have time to go. I just, didn't really have interest to go per se. And so, I made that very first costume just for Halloween, which was a Green Lantern. And I joined Facebook and start posting photos of the Green Lantern and start doing charity events. And then, people were asked, well, hey, what conventions do you go to? You should check this out. I'm like, never been. So I went to my very first convention at the end of 2013. And then I think 2014, I just tried to hit like every convention as an attendee that I could, just because I was blown away. I'm like, man, this is amazing. Like, what have I been missing? So I think like end of 2014, 2015 was my first like guessing time, of being asked to come out and judge costume contests and that stuff. And it was an incredible experience. It was totally I didn't know what to expect, because you're kind of on the other side. People were kind of there to see you instead of you're there to see people, but you still are. It's one of those weird things. But it was an incredible experience, and yeah, I absolutely love it. And so that's what I've been doing ever since. I'm close to like averaging 2 shows a month since then.
Oh my goodness!
And it's yeah.
Well, then this next question.
Life now. That is life now.
This question on the screen is from your friend Casey.
Uh-huh.
And she says, have you ever had a costume malfunction or a costume emergency? Question mark.
So she knows pretty much every
It's
single
a loaded
story.
question. Huh?
Yeah, it is.
Mhm.
She knows everything. I've had many. I think everyone's had a few. I've had many. Man, there's been times I've called her after like charity events because kids are brutal and they'll just rip your prosthetics right off and they're just beating you and stuff. And so there's been times I've called her just kind of quasi crying. But I think everyone's had those costume malfunctions where you're on the show floor and you walk around this thing in your house, you know it's all good, but it's Murphy's Law. As soon as you walk on the show floor, boom, something's going to snap, something's going to break. It's just going to happen. That's why I always have an emergency kit on you. But I think literally every costume I've had some kind of malfunction with. I mean, even if it's just like a contact falling out or something, but there's always something that goes wrong.
Well, before we make that story too embarrassing, this is a really good question on the screen. It's a couple of questions together. Have you ever done a mashup like Captain America and Superman? What characters would you love to combine? And I think as fast as your mind works, this is going to be a good answer.
I haven't done any mashups. I love them. I love those mashups like Darkflaw, Batman and Wolverine. I would love to do that. But that's the other thing with me. I have to have that intense interest to do it. Like as much as I love it and it's awesome, I just don't have the interest to make it. And if I don't have that intense interest to make it, it's not going to be fun. If it's not going to be fun to do it, then I'm not going to do it. So even if I love something, I like it on paper, that doesn't mean it's for me to do. So no, I haven't done any mashups, but there's tons I like, but no, I haven't done any.
That's fair. It's the bottom of the hour, and we're going to remind everyone again about the reason for the weekend. One simple wish is getting the funds that will be donated, and as you can see on the bottom crawl there, justgiving.com, and there's a specific page. Small donations can make big differences. I believe we're still holding at $800, and we would like to see that number go up. Back to the interview. Oh, my goodness. Had the wrong side of the page up. You know, you probably answered this one, but I had it specifically as a question, so I'm going to ask it again. Maybe there's another answer for it. Have you ever been humbled in a costume? And by that, I mean, was someone moved by you? And I think that's what you meant about the child that was the student that saw you as Batman. Is that become more of a commonplace situation for you? I would think that would be a very interesting experience on a personal level if someone was like, I just love what you do because it's so cool.
Yeah. And every convention, there's at least 1-2 people that come up and say just that. As much as it is awesome to say kids are enamored with you and seeing their hero come to life, honestly, it's the adults that get me. And it's because, there's something truly innocent seeing a 6-year-old person really just taken back because you brought their character to life that they've seen and that they love, and it's just seeing the adults really appreciate what you do. That is really special. Because I know for me, again, like Superman is one of my favorite characters. So even now, just seeing someone dressed up as Superman, I play it cool, but inside I'm just like, hey, I'm all giddy because
right?
It's Superman, right?
Right.
So yeah, seeing adults and having adults come up to you and do that is absolutely
excellent. There's a comment on screen from Susanna Schwack. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that.
Thanks he mispronounces my name too. It's fine.
Oh, that was all sorry. Yeah, let me go ahead and just follow that joke up. Thanks for the invite, Knightmage. I'm sorry, Knightmage. Glad to be here to put the voice to the face behind all of your myriad images.
Oh, yay.
How about that?
Coming. Yay.
Fans, yay.
I hate my voice, but that's fine.
Oh, well, well, I mean, that's an interesting point. If there's some aspect of you and this is a generalized thing, some aspect of you that you don't think is so awesome, you don't have to necessarily highlight that part. You have plenty of characters where you probably just walk around and don't say a word, just give them the eyebrow or stare them down. If you don't want to talk, let the suit do the talking for you, kind of thing.
That's why I love Snake Eyes.
There you go. Can't talk. Sorry, can't do it. Let's talk about for a second about where your inspiration came from, because you have such a myriad, as stated, list of costumes. I wrote down, movies, comics, anime, literature. What's maybe the fastest? You're just like, oh, I got to make that. You're exposed to something. You never saw this movie. You see this movie, you're like, bam, I got to do that. What sort of?
Fastest turnaround like that. I can't even think of anything. Because usually, like I said, my turnaround is a span of a 2-week period. So anywhere between that time. I guess it depends on how intricate the costume is too. But man, my inspiration comes from all over the place, honestly. Again, it's just literally, am I going to have fun with it? I remember for Christmas, because I have a weird thing where Halloween time, I just have to do horror type themed Halloween costumes. It's just, I don't know why. I just have to do that. Christmas time, I just have to do just Christmas themed costumes, weird thing. So one Christmas, one of my favorite Christmas movies is A Christmas Story. And I was just watching it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, the leg layer. That'd be fun to do. And then 2 days later, I'm the leg layer. It's just, I draw inspiration from so many different things. It just will come to me.
Excellent. Have you ever made a costume, let's say on a dare? You make for yourself, but someone's like, I know you already got Superman, you got Batman, but I dare you to do blank. Have you ever had someone else give you the inspiration?
Oh yeah, and usually that's when I'll do the Laura Croft. Laura Croft was a character. So I only did it because I was doing the interview, and guy said, "Well, you look awesome. I don't think you would look awesome as Laura Croft. I don't think you could do that. I don't think you could pull it off." All right, watch me.
Right.
Usually it's those type of characters. When people say I can't do something or I shouldn't do something, I'll do it. And literally it's just out of spite.
Okay. Well, then on the screen right now, John Lamb is asking a question right in tune with this. Would you ever consider doing a Dennis Rodman cosplay?
So that's funny because he actually, we thought about doing actually he thought of it. He wanted me to be Dennis Rodman to his Kim Jong-un. And,
oh my gosh.
And I was a little bit inebriated, and I was this close, just saying, pulling the trigger. Let's do it. I'm not doing that.
All right, we'll segue out of that by saying I've been given an update that we're up to $825 on the donation. So good job, folks.
Yay.
Thank you for that. We can take a little more. I'm sure there's more to spare there.
Is there actually, let me ask about that. Is there a specific goal that you guys are trying to reach?
I know there is. I don't remember exactly what it was. And I don't know there it is now. That's a fast reaction. The goal is $1,500. And magic typing numbers, would you please tell me? It's not at the end of today. It's not at the end of tomorrow. I believe this is going to carry over for a couple more days. Now is obviously better so that we know that we have it while we're broadcasting. But they'll be taking donations for a couple days, which is excellent.
Awesome.
And here's one. With that variety of costumes, do you ever consider the notion of I need a base? Do you make gauntlets that can be used for 6 different characters, or do you make them new every time?
Oh no, I repurpose a lot of different things. There's a lot of bodysuits that I'll wear for one character to the next. Boots, a lot of boots that I can repurpose, and kind of that goes with the freedom and artistic liberties is you can create these characters how you see fit. So I can do that. I can repurpose different things. I'm always about repurposing. So like two things I guess with me is the speed, the turnaround stuff, but also the budget. I really like to show that like cosplaying, it can be expensive, but it doesn't have to be. Again, that goes with the, am I making this for a contest? Am I making this for just for me to have fun? And again, if I'm making it for me to have fun in, I'm not going to spend that much money. So like my budget for any costume is $250. If I can't make it for $250 or less, probably not going to do it. So that's my thing. Yeah, repurpose a lot.
Repurpose this one for us. What about a mashup? Dennis the Menace Rodman.
Right,
or is that redundant?
That's pretty funny, actually. That's pretty But it goes back to my whole thing with the mashups. Like, it sounds awesome on paper. Like, I'm picturing it and it looks awesome, but I don't have that. I got to do it.
Right. It's a funny joke. It's like telling a writer, I got an idea for a movie. Oh, that's a great idea. I'm not going to write it, but
yeah.
So how about this one? This one I think you'll answer better. I'm sorry. This one I think you'll answer, and I'm just going to bail out. I'm going to start over. What's your favorite horror costume for Halloween?
Oh, I know that right off the bat. 13 Ghosts. 13 Ghosts. Was this during the COVID times, like 2 years ago? I wanted to do one of the 13 Ghosts. And if you don't know what 13 Ghosts is, it's a early 2000s horror movie, but it's a remake of a 1960s movie. And it's about these 13 ghosts who all have like really tragic backstories. And there's a guy trying to capture all the ghosts. And it's a really, it's a cult classic movie now, I think. But it's really cool. And all the ghosts are wildly different, right? So I didn't know which ghost I wanted to do. So I'm like, well, I'll just do all 13. So in a span of about 2 weeks, I built a ecto glass cube in my garage using shower curtains and airbrushing the symbols on, and made all 13 ghosts. And me and my one friend Andy Serpenti and Achu Cosplay, they came and helped me photograph them and do some videos, and it was amazing. But that was just my favorite thing. It's probably my favorite thing as far as makeup wise too, because again, every single ghost was just wildly different. Like from the hammer, and the hammer has literally like hundreds of nail spikes. So I just made foam spikes. They're they're latex on, and just blood everywhere, and also making the costume. To doing the Angry Princess, and the Angry Princess is literally just a naked female. She's just naked, and she has cuts all over her body and bloody. And so, it's going from that to turning myself into a naked female, dead naked female. That it just and doing it, 11 other times. That was my favorite project to date, actually.
Excellent. There's a compliment on screen. It says, we want to compliment you on your Gizmo Duck.
Gizmo Duck. Thank you. Yes, Gizmo Duck was fun. That was a fun costume too. That was one where I'm like, I saw it. I was watching like a rerun of DuckTales. I saw Gizmo Duck. I'm like, I gotta do Gizmo Duck. But how am I gonna do Gizmo Duck? I knew I definitely want to be able to just ride around. So I had the idea of making the wheels out of foam, but then also riding on one of those hoverboards. And so then I figured, well, that way I can actually walk around and split my feet apart, walk around, and it will still look like a wheel. Or I can jump on the hoverboard and just ride around on the hoverboard. And it really turned out really awesome. And actually, it kind of goes back with the thing where you don't know who's watching you. Once I did it, I didn't tag them or anything like that, but Swagtron, the makers of the hoverboard, they ended up seeing it, and they ended up sponsoring the costume. It was amazing.
That's excellent. Where does knowing how to ride a hoverboard fit into that experience?
It was a lot of trial and error, a lot of hurting, a lot of ouchies.
Yeah.
That was. I'm not the most like gracious person. I'm pretty clumsy.
We got, I think we're stuck on the mashup idea again. Here comes Susanna with, on the mashup idea, while working as a bouncer at a local bar, I came up with a functional mashup that I called Horton Here's a Doctor Who.
Yeah.
That would be, that's how you
I like
address
that.
address the elephant in the room, right?
All right. No, that was terrible. That was
You got to put a dad joke in there. John Lamb is back with Knightmage is my hero and my goat. He makes me want to better my cosplay game. There you go. So someone getting inspired, which is excellent.
Thank you, John.
And another question right away. Is life really like a hurricane?
Yes. Yes, it is. Yes. It is very much like a hurricane. Yes.
What's the hurricane's name?
Man. I mean, Mage.
Hurricane Mage coming your way. And then some silly local news guy that doesn't know what he's talking about. Tonight, Hurricane Mage. Oh, I'm getting an update. Hurricane Mage. Sorry.
It writes itself.
There you go. On the screen again. Thank you for joining us. Please consider donating to help us reach our goals, which are $1,500 is our goal, and it will be open for a full week. So you can watch these, any live stream that you missed, you should be able to watch on YouTube, and the information will still be there so you can donate later, and we really appreciate that. It's put in the private chat, Hurricane Duckburg. Yep. Just gonna let that one hang in the air for a minute. Okay, that's long enough. So what are you working on now?
Now the theme song in my head. Thank you.
I heard a meteorologist pronounce the T on Hurricane Margot, so Hurricane Margot. Okay, then. What are you working on now? I mean, I imagine that you had to sit here for 48 minutes and you're like, I could be sewing.
I know, right?
We appreciate it, though.
So the current thing I'm working on is it's a project. I can't really say exactly what it is, but it's an original character from a original IP. The producers of it is from a really, really big franchise. So when they approached me, they literally had this. They developed this character with me in mind. Just basically kind of preemptively thinking them say yes, they were right. So when they approached me with it, I'm like, yes, of course, I would love to do this. And so they actually got me hooked up with the designers and stuff, and we were able to collaborate on some ideas on the actual design of the character. So being able to do this and bring it to life and have it be me, like have it be my character, that it's honestly a dream come true. So yeah, I can't wait to really just fully talk about it and show everyone. It's definitely there's a lot of things I'm going to be doing with the project that I've dealt with a little bit, but this is one of those things where I need it to be perfect, So so I'm excited for that. Other than that, just like personal projects. So coming up at one of the conventions, Grand Rapids Comic Con, me and BB Alcade, Papa Bear Cosplay, and Skeeter Sweets Cosplay, Envy the Green Fairy, we're going to all be doing a Super Mario Brothers group. And so I'm going to be Mario for their group. So I come up with a Warrior Mario design. And so that's going to be the next meet.
Excellent. Well, I know you said you couldn't talk about it much, but I do have a question. That sounds like a project where you're going to be doing more collaborating than you're familiar with. Is that odd territory for you? Does it feel right to be sharing something like that?
Well, it's not necessarily collaborating as far as making the costume. It's fully just me making it. It's more so collaborating as in being told where to go, what to do type of deal. You know what I mean? But as far as just the creation of the character, no, that's all me. So I wouldn't say it's unfamiliar territory. It's just a little bit more pressure because it has to be perfect to not just what I think perfect, but just to make other people happy and other people excited. So that territory is a little bit. But as far as actually creating it.
Is this something that someone else gets to be rolling it out first, and then you're going to be permission to share your side of it, or are you going to be announcing that yourself first, or what's the deal there?
No, once they roll out, there's a few different platforms that's going to be rolled out on, not just one thing. So once that gets rolling, then I will be kind of the spokesmodel just to kind of get it spearheaded, and but that will be coming like early 2024.
Excellent. I'll go back to as they always say, someone that knows more than you. The newer folks to this experience right now, maybe they've made some costumes, maybe they made a couple contacts, but they want to get out there more. Is there any pitfalls that you might want to share as far as getting into the convention aspect or something like that?
Pitfalls. I guess like if you're just looking for like tips, be humble and just grateful for the opportunities. And I think that's something a lot of people kind of maybe get lost in, is thinking thinking that they're better than they are. And what I mean by that is, man, like this, if you look at cosplaying, there's hundreds of thousands of amazing crafters out there. And in no way, shape, or form do I ever think I am better than any single cosplayer out there, because I'm not. Because art is purely subjective. So what you think is awesome, someone else might not. And it's just literally the role that I'm in and the things I get to do. It's literally about the luck of the draw. Right time, right place, right person. It could easily be someone else, and maybe should be someone else. So I think, if you have the opportunities that come your way, just be grateful and thankful for them, but stay humble and realize that like literally it was luck. Like you might be good, your craftsmanship and stuff might be awesome, but it's luck that you're there, and don't take that for granted and just be thankful for it.
Excellent advice. Another question on the screen: would you ever do a Broadway costume, maybe at Broadway Con?
I haven't done any type of Broadway costume as far as musicals. But as soon as I saw that question, immediately I just thought of Broadway from Gargoyles. But
that's a different kind of mashup,
right?
I took your idea and I mashed it up this way.
No, I haven't actually. I'm not opposed to it. Actually, I'm not opposed to doing like a Greatest Showman. But yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I just haven't thought of it.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I'd say we got about 5 minutes ish left on the clock.
That was a quick hour.
Well, when you're sitting there talking to a goofball that just tries to be nice to people he doesn't know very well, it just time flies.
Are you calling me a goofball?
No, you called me a goofball.
Oh.
No one. There's no goofballs here.
No, I am a goofball. I'm absolutely.
High five. There you go. I think we've covered just about every topic I can think of, so it's free form time. I was trying to think about when you were in Metropolis, you did mention. I was running back and forth. I heard a little bit of your Q&A, and I believe I heard the word transparent tubs. So when the amount of stuff you have, you said it's organized chaos. How good are you? Because that's got to be. I mean, there are times when you want to be creative, and you look at your area and you're like, but it's a mess. I can't think. How do you manage that chaos? A little advice that way would go a long way, I think, for me at least.
I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, someone comes in and tries to clean up your area, that it's a total mess. If someone tries to clean up your area and you get mad because you know where your mess is, you know, in a pile full of fabrics, you know where that one fabric is underneath that other fabric, underneath that other fabric. You know where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's an organized chaos. Like I know where everything's at. It might take me a second to unbury it, but I know it's down under there, under all that hot glue and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I know where everything's at. I know.
Excellent.
But as far as like costumes, that's why I do label all my totes, because that's a different story. That's just too much to just try and memorize. But everything else I know where it's at. It's my
if you had to run out the door in the next hour and someone's like, you got to come costume for me right now, what is your like one or two super go-tos? I would do this any day of the week, no matter whether I have a headache, whether I'm dehydrated, whether I feel amazing. What's a good one to do that you have on already?
If I just have to go quick, probably He-Man. I love doing He-Man. It's comfortable. You know, it's just so goofy. It's just it makes people smile. It makes me happy. So yeah, maybe He-Man. He-Man. I will always do He-Man.
When did that one come into the mix, just for reference? I mean, you've been doing this for like 11 years or so. Is that one you've had for a long time?
He-Man, maybe 3 years. Yeah, maybe 3 years. I did Skeletor first. I did Skeletor maybe like 6 years ago, and then I did Hordak, and then I did He-Man.
The trifecta. No Man at Arms?
No Man at Arms. I did make my friend She-Ra. So when I did my He-Man, I did make her She-Ra, which I kind of want to make me She-Ra.
So yeah, you 300 costumes for yourself. You must have along the way. We only got about a couple minutes here. This might be the last question ish. How often do you have those kind of situations where you pair up with someone else to do, even if it's just a photo shoot? You're like, hey, I'm going to do this. You make that real quick. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Does those situations come up?
Oh, all the time. Like my friend Rachel, I shoot cosplay, and it's good with this because like I'll just message her and like, hey, and she already knows right off the bat he's about to ask me to do something in like a week, and I got already thinking costume, and she's always for it. But yeah, all the time, I'll be making something, and I'll just think, oh my god, it'd be awesome if I had a so and so with me, and I'll think, okay, I think this person to be able to do it, and he'll like it or whatever. And so far, it's worked out pretty well. I haven't been turned down yet.
Excellent. My clock says 5:59. I'm going to hit you with one really good, horrible dad joke mashup. This came to me and incorporates everything, including what was on the screen, which, as you mentioned, Ray, show me what's your favorite song from the movie. I've got it now. Here it is. Here's your costume. You're going to do Music of the Knightmage. Thank you. Stunned silence. I couldn't hope for anything more than that. This has been a wonderful hour. I've enjoyed this greatly.
The Greatest Showman, specifically from Panic at the Disco.
There you go. I think we're out of time. This is awesome. I would love to do this again on another occasion. I look forward to seeing you at a convention one of these days. Probably not too hard to find you at a convention because you're a super busy guy and you're out there all over the place doing good things for good people, and we appreciate it. Donate, everyone. Please do. And I think I'm going to surrender it. It is 6 o'clock. We'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
I'll just do this until they take me off the camera.
Now it's just me.
Whoops. Sorry about that, Michael. Hi, Victoria. How you doing tonight? Or this evening, actually, where you're at.
I'm just
Afternoon.
unmuting myself. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Doing fine, ma'am. I just want to say thank you for joining us, and it's an honor to get an opportunity to speak with you. I'm looking forward to talking with you, and especially about your dad. Before we get started, I just wanted to say to the folks out there that are watching, remember, part of the reason we're doing this is to raise money for the One Simple Wish Foundation. It's a great charity that helps to bring wishes to children that are in foster care. A lot of these kids have gone through childhood trauma. They've seen a lot of things that would break most adults. And the name says it all. These kids are not asking for a lot. They're asking for very simple things that a lot of kids and even adults take for granted. So if the spirit moves you, please, by all means, donate during this next hour. And if you can't donate today, bring your wallets tomorrow, because we're going to be doing this again with a lot of other fine folks, like the lady I'm talking to right now, Miss Victoria Price. Victoria is an established author, speaker, and teacher. But the reason why I'm excited to talk about her is she is also the daughter of my all-time favorite actor, Mr. Vincent Price. I grew up on your dad's movies, and like I said, he's one of my boyhood heroes. I mean, he was just really amazing. I wanted to ask you, being the daughter of Vincent Price, when did you realize that this wasn't just dad? When did you realize that this was a horror icon and a celebrated actor?
You know, I grew up in Los Angeles and Hollywood. So I think in some way, you know, it was like maybe growing up in Detroit and you kind of like everybody's in the car industry in some way, right? It was a company town. And so there were a lot of other kids in my class in school whose parents were in the movie business. So it wasn't so much that he was in the movie business that seemed special or made him seem special. It was really just who he was that made him seem special to me, you know, and I thought that that's really how other people reacted to him too. He just was this big bright light, and he always retained that childlike joy and enthusiasm for trying new things and meeting people and kind of trying and doing anything. And so that was, to me, what made him seem so different from other adults. So it wasn't really, I mean, yes, of course, I recognized that people came up to him and asked him for his autograph and recognized him and all of those things. But it's really how he moved through the world, to me, that made him seem so different than most adults.
Gotcha. I wanted to ask, was there a particular role of your dad's that was a favorite of yours?
Well, I don't like horror movies. I'm sorry.
No problem.
I've never liked being scared, you know. So even as a little kid, the first thing they took me to see that he was in was Peter Pan, a production of Peter Pan in Los Angeles. And I was so terrified of the fact, well, first of all, I didn't understand what had happened to his hand, why he had a hook. And then he was so mean and he was doing bad things to all those kids on stage. And that didn't seem like the person I knew at all. So after that, they pretty much, you know, I could watch him on television, but they knew horror movies were not going to be for me. And I just never really liked being scared. And so I knew he did horror movies, but I really knew about it from the things that he did that spoofed himself, like, let's say, The Muppet Show or Carol Burnett Show or things like that. So I knew, you know, that he made scary movies, but I didn't watch them. And now, of course, I've seen them and I realize they're not so scary compared to what's out there now. But at the time, you know, I know my friends all wanted to spend Halloween with us and things like that, but I didn't know that he was a scary person because he just was the least scary person on the planet.
Well, the fascinating thing about your dad is he really didn't become known as a horror actor until I think it was really House of Wax. Throughout the 40s, I remember him from our Christian has mentioned Laura and Song of Bernadette. I remember him from Dragonwyck, which I think is a very underrated movie. And
it is
also
an underrated movie. And I think that movie, there was a great article in the New Yorker last week by Richard Brody about how Dragonwyck was Joe Mankiewicz's first film as a director. He produced other films, but it was his first film as a director. And it's a really wonderful article about how the seeds of all of Mankiewicz's future films can be found in Dragonwyck. And I would actually say the same thing is true of my dad, that the seeds of so many of the characters he became most famous for playing, but in particular, let's say all the Gothic Poe films, you know, they're all found in Dragonwyck. You know, he played many drug addicts over time. He played these elegant men whose lives fall apart, you know, so it's all in there in Dragonwyck.
I was also going to say another favorite of mine is Leave Her to Heaven, which
Yes.
I'm a huge Gene Tierney fan, and I love the movies that your dad made with her.
Yeah, and Laura on top of that. Yeah.
Were there any actors or actresses that your dad knew that he was really close to, they really considered good friends?
Yeah, absolutely. Boris Karloff, you know, was a dear friend of his. Close friends that he probably socialized with more. Eddie Albert was one of our dearest friends, who was a Broadway actor, and then of course people know him on TV from Green Acres. So he was one of those people who was always over a lot. But there were so many, you know, when he was married to my stepmother, so many of the great British actors, you know, he was so honored to call friends. He met John Gielgud when he was in his my dad was in his early 20s in London. My stepmother was dear friends with Alec Guinness and Sir Laurence Olivier and Maggie Smith and Judi Dench. And I know my dad was just so honored to call some of the greatest actors of this generation and the previous generation friends. And that was, you know, he was a fan. He was a fan from the very beginning. He wrote fan letters in college. When he did, the first play he ever did was with Helen Hayes, who was the first lady of the American theater. And when he went out to Hollywood for the first time, she sent a letter of introduction to someone she considered a friend in Hollywood, who was Joan Crawford. I mean, there wasn't really a bigger star than Joan Crawford at certain point in Hollywood. And so my dad, you know, got a call one day, and he picked up the phone, and she said, "Oh, Vincent, it's Joni." And my dad's like, "Joni, who?" You know? And she invited him to over for a potluck, which was not at all what, you know, people from the Midwest, which is where my dad was from, thought of as a potluck. And she was constantly a kind, dear friend to him during his early years of Hollywood. So he had Roddy McDowell, another dear family friend. So he just was one of those people who made friends. He was not maybe on the level of Roddy. I think Roddy was one of those people who, there are people in life who have a gift for friendship, and Roddy was one of those people. He had a gift for friendship. My dad had a gift for connecting with people.
Well, I was going to say, I would have loved to have spent time with him, considering the fact that he was a gourmet cook, his love of art. He just really struck me as one of these Renaissance men. It was just anything that was creative. It just seemed like your dad just was able to do it. And
absolutely. Yeah, no, he was often called a Renaissance man. And I like to joke that that's what they call you if you're famous. And then, you know, for the rest of us, it's really, you're a workaholic multitasker. So, you know, but he just was somebody who, he always said, if you limit your interests, you limit your life. And if you're always curious, you'll never be bored. And that's how he lived. He just had this omnivorous appetite for life.
Well, I read the biography that you wrote about your dad. Wonderful book, by the way.
Thank
and
you.
I remember one of the things that stood out was your dad was always constantly waiting for the next job, or was always constantly looking and waiting for the next job. And something you wrote kind of struck me, that he was always worried that this job he was doing was going to be his last job. And it's just hard to believe someone of that talent could have those kind of doubts about himself. And it just really made him seem so human, because it just seemed like a very humble person to feel that way.
Yeah, he was a very humble person. And I think he also recognized the power structure of the industry. You know, to people who aren't in the industry, you think, well, the actors are the face of the industry. But, you know, even as a little kid in the school that I went to, elementary school, I understood that the kids are the producers were, or the studio heads, let's say, were at the top of the heap, then the producers, then the directors, you know. And after that, even though, you know, nobody might know who those producers or directors were, if you were just Joe Schmo, you know, the actors depended on others. And my dad really understood that. I think the other thing, you know, two things to remember, and it's I've been thinking about this a lot because of the actor strike and the writer strike. You know, in those days, there were no residuals. There were no residuals till the, you know, 1970s. And
Right.
so my dad made 105 movies and he didn't get a dime for any of them. All those movies, when they're shown on television, you know, why do you think everybody has seen I mean, the blessing and the curse of it, the reason everybody has seen a Vincent Price movie, there was once I think it was either a New Yorker or a New York Times, like little cartoon, and it said, somewhere, someplace in the universe, a Vincent Price movie is playing, because it's true. But the reason why is, you know, they didn't owe all these levels of residuals. So even now, if somebody repackages House of Wax, you know, his estate doesn't get a dime. And so there wasn't money coming in. You couldn't have a run of 6 good years on Friends and live off of that. There was nothing else coming in. So first of all, you know, he saw it as a job, and a job that put money on the table. I think the second thing, though, is that he loved to work. He loved acting. He loved to work. If he wasn't acting, he was lecturing. 60 cities in 65 days every year all over America. He was the second most popular public speaker after Eleanor Roosevelt. He worked for Sears Roebuck, literally worked for them. He was $1 a year man for 15 years for the U.S. government, for something called the Indian Arts and Crafts Board, protecting and promoting the art of Native Americans. So he was not somebody who sat still very well. Yeah. And, but also it really, I think he came from a line of very successful entrepreneurs. And to him, that's what he was. He was an actor / you know, it was a form of being an entrepreneur. He didn't go to a 9-to-5 job, and he wasn't going to get a watch and a severance, you know, or some, you know, retirement fund at the end. And so it was very important for him to keep working.
I did want to mention, you were talking about not getting residuals, like a 6-year run on Friends. What's interesting now is I am a huge fan of Swinguli on MeTV. And your dad's movies, I think he averages at least a Vincent Price movie once every couple of months. Not just him, but Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney. And I always find it wonderful that there are young kids that are being introduced to these films now. So
absolutely. And that's the blessing of it. The blessing of it is that, you know, so many kids saw my dad growing up. I mean, you know, Svengoolie is the second version of Svengoolie, the first Svengoolie, you know, I mean, from all those horror hosts, you know, Ghoulardi in Cleveland, I mean, all of them, every kid who watched those shows knew my dad and then found out more about him. And so that wouldn't have happened if he had been only able to be seen in the movie theater.
Christian had a very good question. I apologize for not getting to it sooner. Christian was wanting to ask about your dad's roles in films that were done for kids, or specials that were done for kids, like The Great Mouse Detective and Peter Cottontail.
Yeah, well, first of all, you know, I guess what I should say is when he became known as a horror actor, starting in the early 50s, and as it moved on, one of the things he realized really quickly was that the way to have longevity as an actor is to be introduced to each next generation of moviegoers, right? because kids love going to the movies. Kids are learning about the world through movies. And so he had this whole legion of fans who were teenagers in the 50s who knew who he was, whereas many of his peers, some of whom had been vastly more famous than he was in the 30s and 40s, were sort of fading from popularity and view. And so I was born in the early 60s. Now, my dad was in his 50s at this point. So all my friends, he thought, well, I don't want to be one of those old people, and I don't want her friends to not know who I am. So a lot of the TV shows that he did in the 60s were, you know, in some ways like a way of connecting with my generation and my friends and my peers, but also he loved young people because young people are alive to the world. And to the very end of his life, he was always surrounded by young people. And it was so important to him. So of course, then to make things that young people would like, not just in the horror genre, but like The Great Mouse Detective. That was, you know, he had this amazing voice, and he used, his three siblings were very musical. And while my dad could sing, he really, I think his speaking voice was his instrument. And so to get to be in a Disney cartoon and have a singing role in a Disney cartoon was this incredible opportunity for him. And he loved doing it. And I think now people are recognizing, first of all, how important The Great Mouse Detective is in Disney's history, sort of the beginning of a whole other wave for them. But also, I think they're recognizing that it's an underrated Disney film, and it's becoming more and more popular, and he loved doing it. And same with all those specials, like the Christmas special. I mean, you know, he could see that we were all my friends were watching The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, and there was Boris, you know, playing the Grinch. And so he wanted to have the opportunity to do things like that kids would love and get to watch. Now, that Peter Cottontail is not The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, let's be real, but it's not Dr. Seuss either. So
well, that's true, but it's still enjoyable.
Yes.
It was a staple of my childhood, and I was going to say, where I grew up at, we didn't have a lot of kids in my neighborhood. Our nearest neighbors were maybe about a half mile away, and they were a married couple of my parents' age. They didn't have any children, so television was my companion as a kid. And almost every weekday, there would be an episode of The Brady Bunch with your dad, or there'd be an episode of Batman as Egghead, or an episode of Up Troop, which I did want to say Egghead on Batman was one of my favorite characters. And I love these shows because, again, I'm watching the movies on Saturday afternoons, A House of Wax or The Invisible Man, The Invisible Man Returns. But then I'm watching him doing these comedic roles and doing them just so fantastically. And
he loves comedy. I mean, he was a hilarious person. He was a very funny man. Yeah. And he did it so well on his social media, which, by the way, is Master of Menace on, you know, all the appropriate social media things. I started it from scratch years ago, and, you know, it's been a fun learning curve to learn about all the different things that are now part of social media. But I started doing reels fairly recently, and it's been fun. And I noticed that some of the iconic roles, of course, do really well, like House on Haunted Hill. But the other day I posted a reel of my dad. It's one of my favorites, and my dad on the Jack Benny Show. And it's had well over 1 million views in a week. And I love that. I love that people, first of all, love the comedy, you know, but second of all, that people are watching the Jack Benny Show on, you know, social media now. And I think that's just, it's really fun. It's fun to be able, because of my dad's appeal to all different generations, hopefully I can continue to share some of the things and some of the actors who were household names with, you know, people who might not have heard of them because they're coming maybe through the horror genre, let's say.
Well, that's one of the wonderful things about digital television, like MeTV, Antenna TV, FETV. There's such a demand now for the older shows, and they're starting to find an all-new audience again.
I love that.
I always use William Shallard as an example and Whit Bissell, that unless you'd seen the Star Trek episode they did together, a lot of people didn't know who they were. Yeah, these were like two working character actors that were constantly in everything.
Right.
And it's just wonderful that now, like your dad, they're getting an opportunity to be introduced to a whole new audience. And it's a wonderful thing to see. And again, it's programming. I think a lot of parents and a lot of grandparents say, I grew up on it, so it's safe for the kids to watch. It beats Jerry Springer in the afternoon. It's better for you to be watching something like that. So it's safe programming. We got another question here. This kind of leads into a segment I was going to ask about. Christian wants to know if you're a cook like your dad.
My parents would laugh at that. I am an incredibly finicky eater. I always was as a kid, which was incredibly irritating to them. As a little kid, my dad taught me how to make all kinds of things for breakfast, and breakfast is still my favorite meal. So as a little kid, we would make pancakes together, and he had this particular way of making scrambled eggs that I still make, and popovers and all sorts of delicious things. My mother was really the baker, and she wasn't about to, have the patience to show me all of those things. But at the end of his life, my dad really saw cooking as as an art, but something that you had to learn and practice. So he was a very dedicated cook. He was constantly practicing things, and he would get it in his head to try things. And some of them were, more fun than others. Like, I felt like we had ratatouille for like a year straight. I'm sure that's not true, but he was trying to perfect ratatouille. And honestly, I have a really dear friend who eats a lot of ratatouille, and I can't even be near it. Like, that's enough of that. Then one time he decided to learn how to make the perfect creme brulee, and it was during a college break. And so he and I made a Pyrex pan of creme brulee every single day. I couldn't even fit in my clothes when I went back to college. So, but I didn't really have an interest in it until college. And my boyfriend and I, he wanted to learn how to make Chinese food. And so we would try all these different things. He had a wok, and he was trying all these different things. And that kind of kindled the interest for me in learning how to do something well. And at the end of my dad's life, he had he'd gone to Italy to study with Marcella Hazan, who was like the Julia Child of Italy. And he learned how to make risotto. And at the end of his life, it was really the only thing he could eat. And so he taught me how to make an incredible risotto, and he was exacting. Like, he would sit and watch over me to make sure I was doing it correctly. So I would have to say that I cook I don't eat out that much because I'm still a picky eater. I enjoy cooking for myself, but I'm lazy. Like, I don't have the interest in sort of this blending the science and the art that makes somebody a good chef. So, but I've known a lot of wonderful chefs, and I'm actually working on a writing project right now that it's really a big theme of it is food. And I find that the whole foodie culture and chef culture is something that's just in me, even though, like, I know a tremendous amount about it. I just never had the exactitude to want to excel in it. But what I enjoy making well.
I'm a lazy cook myself. If I can't make it in the crock pot, I'm usually don't make it. So.
Well, I think too, the hard part is if I live in a tiny home, but also there's just me. And so, if you make something, then you're eating it for, day. Like I had baked a chicken the other day, and it's like lunch, dinner, chicken. So, I think that's part of it too. It's much more fun to experiment and cook if you're cooking for people who are going to eat it all up. So.
That's true. That's very true. That's very true. Now, if you didn't get your dad's gifts for cooking, I understand you did get your dad's appreciation for art. In fact, as I understand, you're on the board of the Vincent Price Art Museum.
I'm just an emeritus member of the board at this point. I think it's an incredible, first of all, let me just give a big shout out to the Vincent Price Art Museum. My dad was the most important thing in the world to him was the visual arts. It gave his whole life direction and purpose. He wanted to be an artist. When he realized he couldn't be as great as he wanted to be, he became an art historian. And he was studying art history in London when someone dared him to try out for a play. He always had the secret desire to be an actor, but his passion were the visual arts. I think museums were his church and art was his religion, really. And I grew up with two incredibly visual parents. My mother was a designer. And so I've always been a visual learner. I've always been an incredibly visual person. And because it was their mutual passion, they were constantly sort of explaining the world to me in a way that they were very verbal people, and we all were big readers. And obviously, my dad made movies, but it was the art. And it was his love of the art that made me want to learn more about it. And so my dad, in the early 1950s, maybe late 1940s, actually, there was a art teacher at a small 2-year college in Los Angeles who invited him out, and she was doing to just meet the students and stuff. And he went out and he loved what she was doing. She was bringing some of the great Mexican artists to the United States to meet her students. I mean, she was amazing. And so he developed this relationship with her. And then he was asked to give the graduation speech in the late 1950s there. And my mom came. And at this point, my dad was on the board of the LA County Art Museum, of the UCLA Arts Council, and he was actually the chair of that. And everybody was sort of asking, because they had an incredible art collection, if he was ever going to donate to their institutions. And my mom, who had grown up all over the world, she grew up in England and Wales and China and Canada. And she was one of those people who came to America and knew that the opportunities that she had here, she never would have had anywhere else. And so she looked around at all this sea of faces, all of whom clearly were first generation college students, and she hadn't gone to college. And she said, this is where we're giving the collection. So they started, and they gave the collection there, and over their lifetime gave countless pieces of art there. It used to be the Marion Vincent Price Art Museum. Now it's art gallery, I guess. And now it's the Vincent Price Art Museum. And it's at East Los Angeles College. And it's an incredible, incredible place. Not only do they have unbelievable exhibitions and exhibitions that really reflect the diversity of Los Angeles, and in particular, East Los Angeles, but it's a working collection. So students there learn how to conserve art and curate art. It's not art in the rarefied air. And so much of the art that my dad collected was from Mexico and Central America and South America, where many of the students are from. And there's a big Asian component in Monterey Park, where the school is. And my dad and my mom traveled all around Asia, my mom being raised in China, and bought art, a lot of which ended up there. So, it was an incredible, incredible gift. And I began going there when I was a kid, and I saw what a difference it made. And I saw how privileged I was to get to go to all these museums and grow up in this house with art. So, so I was an art history major, and I've owned art galleries, and I still work with gallerists doing their outreach out in the world. But it's a real passion for me. And it's interesting because I think the gift of that connection between my dad and me was it became our safe place, our little language. We would go to museums together. He would send me places. If I saw something, one time I was on a train, I must have been maybe 21, and I was on a train, and I was looking at the stops. This is long before cell phones, and the name rang a bell, and I thought, there's something here I need to see. So I just got off this train, and I saw this incredible piece of art that I'd studied, but it so blew me away that I just stared at it for an hour without moving. And then I wrote my dad a postcard, and he wrote me back, I'm so mad that you saw this before me, but I knew he wasn't mad. It was this, and then it became this thing from then on. When he realized I loved it in my own way as much as he did. We worked on a book about art together. He would send me to see things, especially when he got ill that he could no longer see. We would compare notes. We would talk about it. We'd go to museums together. It was a real gift to have that connection with him. And so, you know, for me still, I think museums are this place where just they feel like all the best things about a sanctuary to me, you know. I don't want to use the word church because I think a lot of people have from their childhoods not a great, you know, association with church, but that sort of that like a temple, a place of safety. And I still go into a museum and I'm like, okay, everything's okay.
It's wonderful that you've got that association with museums and art with your dad. And I can imagine that's a wonderful way to still have a connection with him, even after him being gone for so many years.
Yeah. And the fact that the museum, you know, there comes a time where, you know, the family should step aside and, you know, the most important thing for me with the Vincent Price Art Museum is that what it stood for, what it meant to my parents continue on, and what they're doing is just phenomenal. And if any people are out there in LA or you're going to LA, please go check out the Vincent Price Art Museum. The collection there is extraordinary. The campus is extraordinary. I had the privilege of giving the graduation speech there last year, which was amazing to come full circle, 11,000 graduates. It was really incredible.
Amazing. Well, one of the things I admired about your dad, like I said, loved him as an actor, loved it. I loved his horror roles, but one of the things I really admired about him was the work that he did with Sears in bringing art to the public. I believe it was in your book that you mentioned that for the first time, people from the Midwest, people from the East Coast, people from the West Coast, people from every walk of life in America could have a unique piece of artwork in their home. And I really think he really brought that attention to people. It isn't just something that hangs in a museum. It's something that you can find, you can bring it to your home, you can share it with your children, you can pass it down. And I always thought that was a wonderful thing that he did for society as a whole. I think the connection with your dad, it's like, well, Vincent Price likes artwork, I gotta like it too. That's cool. But at the same time too, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
He felt art was transformative, and to have it in your home, to have a relationship with a work of art every single day, it's a reciprocal transformative experience. And he just felt it was so important that art not be the province of the elite, something that only the uber rich could own or the rest of us could see in museums. It's something. And so the idea was to have people be able to buy. He bought every piece of art that was sold in the Vincent Price collection himself. He found them. My mother framed most of them in our basement. She became this incredible, I mean, she designed the frames, and it was definitely a family affair. And I think for him, it was really about opening up art to the masses. He was a populist because he felt that art had transformed his life. He bought his first piece of art when he was 12 years old. He walked by a gallery and he saw something in the window, and it just blew his mind. And he went in, 12-year-old kid in St. Louis, Missouri, and he asked the gallery owner, there were like 3 galleries in St. Louis, and he asked the gallery owner what it was. And the man said, well, it's a first state Rembrandt etching. And my dad knew who Rembrandt was at 12 years old. And my dad just thought it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. And this gallery owner, my dad asked how much it was, $37.50 in 1920, whatever, 3. And he made a payment plan with my dad. It took him 3 years to pay it off. But he owned a Rembrandt, a first state Rembrandt etching when he was 15 years old. And I blessed that gallery owner. And I think that's what my dad wanted to recreate for everybody. So you could buy these on your Sears credit card on a payment plan. I met a woman one time who worked at Sears. I think it was maybe the second one. The first Vincent Price collection, they traveled to the different Sears. And the first one was, I believe, in Denver. But I think one of the early ones was in Pasadena, California. And I met a woman who worked there. She was like 19 or 20 years old. And she still had the price sheets. It was like Picasso, $95. She asked my dad, Mr. Price, what would you buy? And he had a conversation with her and they talked about what she liked. And she bought it. Old in college, she didn't have a safe place to put it. So it lived in her parents' house for quite a while until she, but she bought it on her Sears credit card with a money back guarantee and she still has it. And it was this transformative thing for her to buy her first work of art.
I was going to say, one of the things I had also read are accounts from artists that talked about how your dad really put them on the map by letting Sears carry their work, but also just buying artwork from them kept them going. It kept them in, continuing to create. And again, that's a wonderful thing.
And he bought what he loved, and he was all about supporting young artists. And some of those artists became famous. Richard Diebenkorn, who's probably the most famous of the West Coast abstract expressionists, and certainly one of the most famous abstract expressionists. My dad bought his first Diebenkorn for, I think, $50, and my mother bought one after that for, I think, I don't know, $75, and, but, Diebenkorn was so grateful to my dad for his early patronage that he gave my dad one of his pieces. Wow. But what really struck me about it was I owned a couple of art galleries, and a great collector named Gifford Phillips came in and he was chatting with me and he said, I bought my first Diebenkorn because your dad told me to. And I had never really heard it from that side. And that explained something to me as well. First of all, how people valued my dad's eye, but also what a difference it made to those artists. It wasn't just that my dad bought those 2 Diebenkorns. It was that other people bought them because of it. The sweetest story, a story I love, my dad bought this watercolor. I love watercolors. It was an abstract watercolor, and you don't see that many abstract watercolors. They lend themselves better to, let's say, landscape painting. And I fell in love with it. And so my dad bought me one from the same artist for my 16th birthday. It was my 16th birthday present, my own watercolor by that same artist. Well, years and years later, I met that artist. She had moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. I knew she was from Kansas somewhere. And she'd moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and she'd become so successful, she'd switched from abstraction into these massive, beautiful landscapes of New Mexico in watercolor that one of the biggest honors for a New Mexico artist is to be picked as the annual poster piece of art for the Santa Fe Opera, which is a world-class opera. And so to be like George O'Keeffe was one of the early Santa Fe artist poster artists, so it's very prestigious. And Joan Foth, that was this woman's name, had been picked. She was doing very, very well. And so I wanted to have lunch with her. So a mutual friend arranged it, and I wanted to tell her, how much I loved her work and how much I loved growing up with that. It was my first real gift, that 16-year-old present. 16 is a big birthday to get that piece of art. But she told me a story I'll never forget. So she was, her work was shown because it was a small town, and I don't know where she was from in Kansas. And my dad always visited if there was a museum, but her work was often the hotel gift shops were boutique kind of gift shops in those days. And her work was shown there. And my dad saw it, they always put him up in a nice hotel, and he bought it. Well, his purchase changed her life because apparently 2 months earlier, the most influential banker in town had bought that exact piece of art. And what you have to understand is my dad was so well known as an art expert because he wrote a syndicated column. He'd been on a show called the $64,000 Challenge twice as an art expert. And that was like The Voice or American Idol. It was a huge show that everyone tuned into live. And so everybody knew my dad was this art expert. So this banker bought this piece and brought it home, and his wife hated it. And really? And she was like the hoity-toity society lady. And so it just completely, you know, it was returned to the store and it just ruined her reputation. And then in walks Vincent Price 2 months later and buys it, and then buys a second one. And she said she never looked back after that. It changed her career and her confidence in herself. So, you know, patronage, I give a lot of talks and I've moderated a lot of groups about the importance of being a collector, a true collector. Not somebody who buys art to keep up with the Joneses, but somebody who is a patron of the arts at whatever level you can be a patron of the arts. It's so important because, you know, especially now with no funding for arts in the schools, you know, it's so important that people who understand art and love art and have any kind of financial wherewithal to support the creation of art do.
That's one of the things I'm very sorry about, is that there's no one like your dad to step up to champion the arts like he did. Because like I said,
Steve Martin is a huge collector. You know, Dennis Hopper, who my dad introduced to art, was a big collector. I think there are some, you know, Steve Martin wrote a wonderful piece in, I think it was the New Yorker many, many years ago about why he collects art. So, but I think my dad took the talking about art so seriously. Really, honestly, it was a selfish thing for him. It was the most important thing to him. It was the, you know, it was like mainlining, you know, joy and hope. And he said, when I lose faith in humanity, I mean, this man lived through, you know, everything, 2 world wars and, you know, the invention of, you know, nuclear weapons. And he said, when I lose faith in humanity, I look at art and I get the faith back. So going around talking about art and making sure that it was kept alive was really sort of his assurance that the world would survive.
well, Christian had a question, and Christian, I apologize again, but it segues into the next thing I wanted to talk about. Christian wanted to know, what was your dad's favorite book or author?
You know, it's funny. He loved to read, but he really loved poetry the most. So I would say he loved the romantic poets the most. So he loved reading poetry and loved listening to opera. Shelley, Byron, you know, though that's probably what he would turn to read. But the book, I remember him telling me how much he loved, is an odd book, and it was called, I haven't thought of it in ages. It was, oh my gosh, I can't remember. It was sort of a woman who unravels an art mystery. Oh my gosh, it's gone out of my head. Well, see, I'll have to, it's in my book. You'll have to read my book to find out. But it was a wonderful, what he loved about it. He loved sort of the way that a piece of art can tie history. I know her first name is Josephine Tay, I think was her name. Now I'm gonna have to Google it. Hold on.
Okay.
But it's a book I remember him telling me about. And, you know, I'm not saying he thought it was like the greatest book in the history of the world, but it was something that that just really struck him. Can't remember, or maybe it wasn't art. It was history. Josephine Tay, I think, was the daughter of time, but it was this idea that there's so many things that happened in the past that we don't know about, and what he enjoyed was applying that to art. What a piece of art, delving deeply into a piece of art, could tell him about the past.
Gotcha. I'll check it out. Like I said, I've got a copy of your book here. Unfortunately, I've got it packed away with a few other books. I need to dig it out because it's been a few years since I've read it. But again, this segues into what I wanted to ask about. The book that you wrote about your father. What was the inspiration for that? What was it that made you decide to share his story with the world?
Well, I didn't want to write a biography. I had no intention of writing a biography. My brother, who's a writer, a wonderful writer, had been asked to write a biography, and my dad said nobody should have a biography written about them. No, thank you. But a dear friend of mine who knew that my dad was, just really frustrated with the fact that his mind was so sharp, but his body wasn't allowing him to do what he wanted to do anymore, said, "Why don't you two work on a book about art?" And I said, "Oh God, he's never going to say yes to that." And she said, "Why don't you just ask?" So I did. And I barely had the words out of my mouth and he said yes. So I had a job then where I worked from, 6 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon. So I'd go over to his house in the afternoons and we'd sit on his bed and I'd put the tape recorder between us and we'd talk about art. That's all. We just talked about art. Of course, art leads you all over the place. And so that led us to talking about many other things, but the topic was always art. And then I transcribed all of that. And then I went to New York to really try to sell that book. And he actually passed away, or he started to go when I was in New York. I flew back and he died while I was in the air. But right before I left for New York, he said, I don't know whether I'm going to make it or not. I said, "Do you not want me to go to New York?" He said, "No, go sell our book." But then, because he was gone, everybody wanted a biography. And honestly, I don't think kids should write their parents' biography. We're not exactly objective. But I had the benefit of not being born until he was 51. And so he'd had 51 years, and really, let's face it, when do we really become conscious? Really conscious. So most of his career happened while I was, either not on the planet or very young. And so I could approach it historically as well. And the real reason for doing it was that I knew things about what mattered to him, like art and cooking and the things that if somebody who was just a horror fan wrote it, they could never know. And so it was really, and I had all those transcribed hours of conversation. And we'd worked on another book about art when I first graduated from college. The summer I first graduated from college, it was a series of essays. And so I knew so much, and he was just this great storyteller, and I loved to listen. And Roddy McDowell once said to me, he said, "Hollywood doesn't know that it has a history. And that is wrong." He said, "Hollywood just acts as if it's the next thing is what's important." He said, "But Hollywood has a history and somebody has to remember it. And you've had the good fortune of growing up around somebody who knows that history, remembers that history, and wants to tell the story of that history. So you better listen." And I always did. I loved listening because my dad was an incredible storyteller. But once Roddy said that, I really understood that I'd been given this gift, this repository of information. And there's people now that I think, I love classic movies, but I wouldn't call myself a classic movie junkie. But, I keep wishing that I was supposed to go out for one of the TCM film festivals, but it was the year of the pandemic, so it was canceled. But I keep hoping they'll invite me because that was what I grew up hearing about. And that was those were the films my mother worked on and my dad worked on. And those are the names I grew up knowing. I barely know who anybody is now, but I know those people. And I'm not even this massive classic movie buff. And so, but I'm a fan of what I studied, what I did my doctoral work on is really about cultural history and the influence of celebrity on our society. And I'm so fascinated with that early celebrity and how it completely molded 20th century America and the world.
Yeah. Well, the wonderful thing about movies and television, there are some that they'll play for a couple of weeks or they run for 13 episodes and they're never seen again. And there are others that become cultural touchstones. There's a line that you can say I can say a line like, "May the force be with you." And just about everybody knows that line. Everybody has heard it. And it's a shared experience, I think. It's that thing about I can be 53 years old and talk to a kid who's 13 who's seeing Star Wars for the first time, and it's like seeing it through their eyes again.
Yes.
And that's the wonderful thing about your dad's movies. Again, they're discovering a whole new audience. They're discovering a whole new generation. But the thing about it is, your dad was a lot more than just the movies that he made. I mean, first of all, he was your father. He was a husband. He was a patron to the arts, cook, a friend, and it's wonderful that you were able to preserve that and pass that information along to let people know that he's more than just the man in House of Wax or more than Dr. Fives. And that's,
But the interesting thing is the fans know that, because there was something, when I first sort of was brought into the horror community, I had this little, sort of pang of jealousy. I thought, oh, Sarah's dad, he played this monster, and Bela's dad, he played this monster, and they have these iconic characters associated with them. And, my dad, he played, Dr. Fives or Henry Jared. They were monster-like, but, he's not a Frankenstein or, a Wolfman or Dracula. But then I realized that in a funny way, my dad was Vincent Price in everything he did. And I think the reason that his character have really appealed to people is that he played these scary people, and the world is a scary place, to at least if you read the newspapers, it sure looks like it's a scary place, and people experience very, very scary things. But there was this sense that underneath that, there was this smart, funny, kind, cultured, interesting, well-rounded person. And I can't tell you how many people have told me that they would imagine that my dad was their dad or granddad or uncle. And I just warms my heart when they tell me that. But what it taught me too was that my dad was, he never said no to a fan. He would remember people he'd worked with 20 years later. He was a people person in the truest sense of the word. He loved people. And, my stepmother was one of the most famous British actresses in her day. And, she's remembered among her peers, but she was also somebody who was a very challenging person, and she was difficult. And my dad, I'm not saying he was perfect. He would be the last person to say he was perfect. And he certainly could have done better at some things. And, but he loved life. He loved people. He was grateful for the fact that he had a job that he loved. He loved art. He was fortunate in that he got to make a living doing many things that he loved. And he knew how fortunate he was. And he wanted to inspire other people to want to do the things that they love. And what that taught me is that what is remembered, the only thing that anybody remembers is love. And that's the only legacy that anyone can leave that will last. Yes, we all know, who Hitler was, or the horrible Attila the Hun or whatever. But we don't know anything about, there's this interesting series of article now about Hitler's home movies and how it's revising people's idea of who Hitler was. But nobody is sort of rethinking Hitler because of it. They're rethinking the horrors that he did with that information of who he was in these home movies, So the people who have done horrible things almost become sort of caricatures or metaphors, we don't really care necessarily who they were. But the people who have done things, or people who did horrible things to us, we remember sort of the trauma they inflicted. But the people who loved us and the people who went through life exuding love, we remember that. And it's just this object lesson for me every day to try to be more loving. And he wore size 13 shoes, and he wore size 13 shoes in love. So I have big shoes to fill, and it's, I don't succeed at all like he did, but he inspires me every day.
Well, after talking with you for about an hour, I think you're on the right track.
Thank you.
And I will say, your dad, I was lucky. I had parents that were awesome. They were great. But being in the horror community and being a science fiction fan, I have talked to a lot of guys and women too who weren't so lucky. their family lives were terrible. They had abusive parents. They had absentee parents. But people like your dad, that was their sanctuary. That's what they
Yeah.
went to. And I figure anytime you can leave somebody with a happy memory, when you leave this world and you think to yourself, the world's a little bit sadder and it's a lesser place because this person's gone, that's probably the best legacy I think a person can have.
Well, it's so important, and I feel so grateful that he was my dad, every day. I mean, here I am in my 60s, is it my dream scenario on a purely sort of, human level to be talking? I mean, I do lots of things in my life, but people really want to talk to me about my dad. And, on a resume level, let's say, or had you said to me when I was 16, 50 years from now, people are going to still want to talk to you about your dad, more than anything else. I would have been like, oh my God, are you kidding me? But, the fact of the matter is, every single time I'm invited to talk about my dad and I talk about my dad, I feel better at the end of the conversation than I did at the beginning, because I remember who he was. Every time I talk about him, it's like the joy he had in living sort of wells up through me. And I think, okay, thank you. Thank you, Dad. Because that's how I felt when I was with him, when he'd come home from a trip and his face lit up, when I knew how much he loved me, when we did fun things together. And I feel that still talking about him.
Yeah. That's the way it is with my parents. Both of my parents are gone, but I will talk to family friends or family members that when they share memories about them, it's like they're still here.
And that's the legacy of love.
It is. I've always been a firm believer that love is something that it can't be destroyed. Love is something that gets passed down. The love that I have from my parents was given to them by their parents and given to them by their parents. And as far back as you can trace your line, there's that spark of love that's been going down the line all the way. And hopefully you get to pass it along to your children and you get to pass it along with the people around you.
Exactly. And, one of the reasons I did this tonight was because I have a really dear friend who works with foster kids. And she's told me, so many stories, and the stories that I remember, yes, there are some absolute, as you said earlier, horror stories, but the stories, she says her favorite day of the entire year is adoption day at court. That one day where she gets to go to court and watch the families that she's worked with and help facilitate it, and the kids who get adopted. She said it's just this, it's just pure joy. But also, she tells me these amazing stories of what these foster families, many of them, do for these kids, and it's so profoundly beautiful. And so it's just really important. Here I am fortunate to come from this dad that was so wonderful and so loving. But if your parents have had issues and challenges, there are teachers, there are foster parents, there are adoptive parents, there are, mentors, there are adults out there who can step in and be what your parent couldn't be. And, I've seen that. My parents were away all the time, and my teachers were so important to me. I mean, as perfect and wonderful as my dad was, he was a workaholic, so he was constantly away, but my teachers, they meant the world to me. And, some of them, as I grew older, became dear friends. And, that legacy of love can be passed down from any adult to any kid, and from any adult to each other, and from any kid to each other. It's the most important thing.
Right. And like I said, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to help out this weekend with the charity. Like I said, one simple wish. If you look at the website, these kids are not asking for the world. These are kids that are asking for school clothes. They're asking. One kid was asking for bath hygiene products so he could go to school and go to work. Just simple little things like that. So many things that a lot of people take for granted. And like I said, I was very lucky. All my nightmares came from your dad. All my horrors were made up. But the kids that are out there that this is going to be benefiting, a lot of these kids are stuff that they should. they should have had happier childhoods. So
Yes.
thank you again for joining us. Because like I said, I think your being here and the other celebrities that have joined us tonight and today, it's going to help us reach our goal. So thank you again, Ms. Price. I appreciate it very much. And
Absolutely.
again, it's been a huge honor.
Oh, it's been so lovely chatting with you. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's donating. It's so important.
Thank you. I was going to say we're at the 8 o'clock hour on the East Coast, so we're going to go and let you go. But thank you again. Anyone who's watching, this is only our second day. We've got another day coming up tomorrow. Bring your wallets, donate big. And like I said, we thank you. Have a good night, guys.